Chapter 587 Poisonous Milk. Silence. The Colosseum had turned eerily silent. No one had ever thought that you could fight in such a manner and have a duel like this. Especially the foreigners. They felt that they had gained some exposure. This was the Global Exchange Conference. Even if you didn't plan to have an exciting and glamorous match, you should take care of your dignity, you bastard. The martial warriors found the edge of their lips twitching as they stared at the unconscious Fortes in the Colosseum. They found the ghastly sight of his swollen head a little funny. But soon after, they started sympathizing with him. What a poor little thing. How could he be so unlucky? Everyone's gaze turned ambiguous as they looked at Wang Teng again. Fear. Even the talents who hadn't started fighting, for instance, Gerald, Valeria, and Tongji, felt fear in their hearts. Their gazes flickered, and their heads were hurting. It would be troublesome if they met this fellow. They were using a unique way to acknowledge Wang Teng's ability. Cough. The high priest finally regained his composure. His expression wasn't good, though. As the culprit who broke his calm mentality, he didn't give Wang Teng any kind expressions. He didn't want to see that irritating face at all. He turned and said to Yoke, Fortes from the White Eagle Nation has lost this duel. Please bring him down. Yoke's face was black. He felt even more humiliated. He rushed into the arena, lifted Fortes up, and glared at Wang Teng. Don't look at me like that. It seems as if I hooked up with your sister. Wang Teng rolled his eyes. Yoke. His face turned green instantly. How did this bastard know that he had a sister? Yoke's anger exploded. In the past, he would break the legs of anyone who dared to lay their eyes on his dear little sister. But this fellow in front of him was a little hard to deal with. He wasn't sure if he could break Wang Teng's legs. Wang Teng suddenly realized that the man's expression had turned extremely ugly, and his gaze was vicious. He was stunned. What did he say? If you have problems with this website, please continue reading your novel on our new website myboxnovel.com. Thanks. Why did this fellow look as if he wanted to kill him? Wait, did he really have a younger sister? Wang Teng's expression turned weird. He probed, if you have a younger sister and she's pretty, you can introduce her to me. Screech. This was the sound of Yoke gritting his teeth. Yoke glared at Wang Teng like he was dead meat. His eyes had turned red. If he wasn't in the middle of a global event, if his identity didn't allow him to act on impulse, he would have fought with Wang Teng right then and there. You, good. He squeezed these two words out of his mouth and left. He was afraid that he wouldn't be able to control himself if he took another look at Wang Teng. Sigh, brother-in-law, don't leave. We can discuss, Wang Teng shouted when he saw Yoke leaving in a hurry. Yoke stumbled midway. He panted heavily before picking up his pace. He wanted to keep his distance from this bastard. Wang Teng shook his head helplessly when he saw Yoke evading him as if he were a poisonous scorpion. He felt that the other party had some misunderstanding towards him. He sighed and decided that he would explain to him properly when he had the chance. He wanted to change Yoke's perception of him and ask him to introduce his younger sister to him along the way. Wang Teng felt that no one in this world understood him. He lowered his head. Multiple attribute bubbles were floating on the ground. They looked round and cute. Spiritual Realm Spirit *80 Spiritual Realm Enlightenment *125 Origin of Life *2 Metal Force *350 Dual Wielding Skill *60 Wang Teng silently counted the attribute bubbles before turning and walking towards the spectator's stand. He touched his chin. Indeed, the beating wasn't a waste. A sizable number of Spiritual Realm Enlightenment and Spirit were dropped. This was the right way to get benefits from others. Also, he received 2 more points of Origin of Life. His Origin of Life was at 1,356 points now. A milky white glow merged into Wang Teng's body, basking him in invisible white light. Others couldn't see the light, though. Wang Teng moaned in his heart. His entire body felt stretched. It was extremely comfortable. This was poisonous milk. It was amazing, but it was poisonous. Wang Teng shuddered. His gaze changed a few times as he walked towards the spectator's stand. Dan Taixian and the others were staring at him strangely. You have offended the people from the White Eagle Nation, Zhu Yushao said after much hesitation. They aren't so narrow-minded, right? This was a normal duel, Wang Ting said guiltily as he looked in the White Eagle Nation's direction. A normal duel? Everyone looked at him in astonishment. Wang Ting felt uncomfortable under their gazes. His head turned numb. Look at how heavy you hit him. Do you think it's considered a normal duel? Don't you have some conscience? Zhao Yuanwu mocked. What do you know? I know my boundaries. His appearance might be a little ugly, but he will get better after 2 days. I'm doing my best to maintain the good relationship between our countries, but y'all are framing me. This is so disappointing, Wang Ting said righteously. Everyone was shocked by Wang Ting's shamelessness. They didn't know what to say. You hit him until he turned into a pig's head, but you say that it was just a little ugly? Did you just say you are trying your best to maintain a good relationship between the two countries? Do you think our relationship could be good after what happened? If Fortes doesn't charge towards you the next time he sees you, we will use your surname. Zhao Yuanwu smiled coldly. Don't, you can change your surname if you want to. Don't drag us into it, Ren Qingcang said. But honestly, don't think of having a good relationship with them. It's unrealistic, Ji Xiuming patted Wang Ting's shoulder and said in a meaningful tone. You don't understand. Trust me, he will smile at me when he sees me again, Wang Ting said firmly. Aye, they lost their words again. Was there something wrong with his head? He had beaten him up so badly. Why would he smile at him? Well, unless his head was spoiled from the beating. While they were arguing, the matches continued. A martial warrior from Country Boar came down and shouted, I, Andrew, will like to challenge the Large Eagle Nation. Wang Ting glanced at the lofty person below. He sat down and happily watched the match while eating his food. I'll do it. A martial warrior from the Large Eagle Nation walked out and entered the Colosseum. Please give your name, Andrew said. William, the martial warrior from the Large Eagle Nation said. Fat. Wang Ting spurted out his drink. Their names were Andrew and William. These names were extremely common in their country. Many people had the same name. What's so funny? Zhu Yushao looked at him strangely and asked. I'm not laughing. Watch the match, Wang Ting stammered and changed the topic. Zhu Yushao shook her head speechlessly. She felt that Wang Ting was a little crazy. Did he knock his head when he was a child? As they spoke, Andrew and William started fighting. Chapter 588. Wang Ting felt enlightened. Boom. The battle below was extremely exciting. The two of them went back and forth, colliding with each other violently in the wide Colosseum and causing force explosions. Everyone felt that the duel had gone back on track. That was it. This was the real competition. Wang Ting and Fortes match wasn't counted at all. Wang Ting seemed to be watching the match, but he was actually focused on his attributes panel. He had obtained a dual-wielding skill attribute bubble earlier and was going through the relevant information in his mind. Rather than calling it a battle technique, it was more appropriate to call it a way of using two swords simultaneously. It was quite useful. At times, using two swords would give him a huge advantage. Through the battle with Fortes, Wang Ting could feel that his dual-wielding was extremely sharp and accurate. If he wasn't fast enough, it would have been hard for him to resist Fortes' onslaught of attacks. Fortes' ability was much weaker than him. He would be able to execute the dual-wielding skill to a higher level. Just imagine, if he carried two swords in his hands during a battle and chopped his way through. How beautiful would that scene be? Boom. A loud explosion came from the arena. The contestants' fists collided, and a powerful force was released, sweeping through the entire Colosseum. Andrew from Country Boar has reached 6th level fist conscious. We can't underestimate any of these talents, Chu Fei said. The water fist conscious of the Large Eagle Nation's martial warrior has reached 5th level too. His force cultivation is higher, so they're of equal strength, Yang Bo analyzed. They commented as they watched the competition. Mu Zhigua and the others agreed with their opinions. These two people had a similar ability, but in terms of combat prowess, Andrew, who had reached 6th level fist conscious, was stronger. Boom. As expected, after a few more exchanges, William vomited blood and was thrown into the air. He lost. The match ended, and William from the Large Eagle Nation left the arena with regret. The people from Country Boar were elated. They gathered around Andrew and laughed happily. Wang Ting was happy too. He glanced at the attribute bubbles dropped in the arena and swept them over with his spiritual power. Earth Force *380 Earth Fist Conscious *120. If you have problems with this website, please continue reading your novel on our new website myboxnovel.com. Thanks. Water Force *420 Water Fist Conscious *90. There were two Fist Conscious attribute. Wang Teng was delighted. One was earth and the other was water. They were both what he needed. The Mirage Mountain Fist Conscious and the Ape King Fist Conscious were both Earth Fist Consciouses. Wang Ting wanted to stack this Fist Conscious on the Mirage Mountain Fist Conscious. Among these two Fist Consciouses, the Mirage Mountain Fist was stronger. Mirage Mountain Fist, 355,000, 5th level. The growth of his Mirage Mountain Fist Conscious came from him picking up attribute bubbles as well as his own cultivation. Then, there was the Water Fist Conscious. He didn't possess this Fist Conscious, so this was another skill for him. As the Water Fist Conscious attribute bubble merged into his body, memories started to appear in Wang Ting's mind. A figure was practicing his fist skills in the water, day after day, year after year. Finally, he understood the movement of water and was able to release endless water conscious when he punched out. The intensity of his fist skill increased exponentially. The combination of Water Fist Conscious and Earth Fist Conscious, the coupling of delicacy and power, could create a stronger effect. This thought suddenly appeared in Wang Ting's mind. Water Fist Conscious, 91,000, 1st level. He had just collected the Water Fist Conscious, so its level was very low. If he wanted to combine these two Fist Consciouses, they must be at similar levels. If not, they wouldn't be able to merge into a whole. The stronger one would just override the weaker one. The Earth Force and Water Force helped him strengthen his foundation so that he could reach the next realm quickly. Even if he didn't participate in the matches, he could have a huge gain. There were so many talents here. Imagine how many bubbles he could pick. The martial warriors from different countries came out one after another, but they were all ordinary. They were strong but not eye-catching. However, to Wang Teng, there was no difference. They were all tools that dropped attribute bubbles for him. Wood Force *450 Wood Fist Conscious *150 Spiritual Realm Spirit *120 Origin of Life *3 Fire Force *520 Fire Fist Conscious *180 Water Force *360 Water Blade Conscious *95 It had to be said that the martial warriors present were indeed the top talents from the various countries. Almost everyone had enlightened a certain conscious. They were all different. Some were weak while others were stronger. Without any exception, though, they were all above the 4th level. This made things easier for Wang Ting. He picked up attribute bubbles until his hand went weak. Even if he didn't use his hand to pick them up, his spiritual power was getting numb too. Wang Ting's gaze shone brightly. The enlightenment of the different fist consciouses flashed through his mind. Gradually, he started frowning. This wasn't right. If he raised the fist consciouses individually, it would waste too much time. It wasn't a good deal for him. It would save time and effort if he could gather them together. Why don't I create a 5-element fist and merge the consciouses of the 5 different elements together? Wang Ting rubbed his chin. The more he thought about it, the more intrigued he became. The combination of the 5 elements would definitely give birth to an extraordinary battle technique. Even more, it would have the different consciouses nourishing it. Wang Ting felt enlightened. His eyes lit up brightly before he closed them slowly. The different thoughts in his mind gathered into a single one. Dan Taixian and the others immediately noticed his change as they felt a strange aura coming from Wang Teng. What happened to him? Zhu Yushao asked curiously. This is enlightenment. Dan Taixian exclaimed in astonishment. Enlightenment. Ji Xiaoming and the others were stunned for a moment. Then, they stared at Wang Ting with wide eyes. He could achieve enlightenment while watching a match. Did he get some incredible takebacks from the matches of the martial warriors from the different countries? How lucky was he? Mind you, Even as talents with extremely high intelligence, there weren't many chances for them to achieve enlightenment. After all, enlightenment didn't rely solely on intelligence. You needed a tinge of luck to stimulate the reaction. To people like Ji Xiaoming, they were considered lucky enough to be able to have one or two occurrences of enlightenment at their age. Most people had no chance. They didn't know how amazing the feeling of enlightenment was. Not just Ji Xiaoming, even Dan Taixian was envious of Wang Teng. Enlightenment happened by chance. Yet, Wang Ting was able to get it while eating and watching a match. Who wouldn't be jealous? Honestly, was he the illegitimate child of Lady Luck? I wonder what he's thinking right now. Ji Xiaoming looked at Wang Ting with envy. Wait and see. Move away from him. Don't disturb him, Dan Taixian glanced at everyone before saying. They were all sensible and gave Wang Ting some space. No one would cause trouble at this moment. To a martial warrior, disrupting one's enlightenment was like cutting off their livelihood. They would be arch-enemies. Even Ren Qingcang and Zhao Yuanwu, who didn't like Wang Teng, didn't dare to act recklessly. Although they were jealous, if they did something as despicable as this, they would be looked down upon by everyone. Time passed slowly as all kinds of thoughts ran through everyone's mind. Wang Teng suddenly opened his eyes. There was a glamorous glint in them. It seemed divine. Chapter 589. It appeared, Ice Element Tool. The 5 different fist consciousness merged with one another, restricting and reinforcing one another. In the end, they turned into an entirely new fist skill. When Wang Teng opened his eyes, he had finished constructing everything in his mind. In this short 10 minutes, a sky-rank fist skill was born. This fist skill had great potential. If he continued improving it and using the 5 different fist consciousnesses to nurture it, it might reach an unimaginable height in the future. The gleam in his eyes disappeared, and he returned to reality. However, when he saw the scene in front of him, he jumped in fright. "Why are you looking at me like that?" he asked Dan Taixian and the other in bewilderment. They looked as though they wanted to eat him alive. When did their taste become so strong? They didn't even let go of a rough young man like him. His mother was right. A man should always protect himself outside. "What do you think?" Dan Taixian glared at him. "You're so lucky. You achieved enlightenment from watching a match," Zhu Yushao said enviously. Ji Xiaoming, Mu Zhiguo, and the others agreed with her. They were filled with jealousy. "My luck is normal, you know. You don't have to be so jealous. The next one might be you." Wang Ting beat around the bush. "Do you think we'll believe you? Do you think we're stupid? Do you think enlightenment is a dish that can be ordered easily?" Zhao Yuanwu was speechless. "You must have benefited greatly, right?" Zhu Yushao asked. "It's all right. I did have some gains," Wang Ting waved his hand and replied. They noticed that he didn't want to continue, so they didn't probe further. This was his secret. It wasn't appropriate for them to get to the bottom of it. But it further confirmed that Wang Ting's gain was huge. TSK, did he think they couldn't tell? Wang Ting didn't care about their looks of envy or jealousy. He stared at the arena below. While he was deep in the state of enlightenment, many attribute bubbles had piled up in the Colosseum. These attribute bubbles hadn't disappeared yet, so he picked them up quickly. Earth Force *110, Wood Force *65, Metal Force *105, Fire Force *80. If you have problems with this website, please continue reading your novel on our new website myboxnovel.com. Thanks. Origin of Life *3 Fire Sword Conscious *65 Her. As the attribute bubbles merged into his body, Wang Ting suddenly gasped softly. The origin of life appeared once again among the bubbles. Wang Ting shuddered, trying his best to stop himself from moaning. 3 seconds later, he glanced at everyone secretly and noticed that they didn't see anything. He silently heaved a sigh of relief. This was so difficult. There was also a fire sword conscious attribute. Wang Ting went through the sword conscious in his mind, allowing his fire sword conscious to rise to another level. At this moment, the match below had ended. Someone else came out. This was a martial warrior from Country Snow. He had long, slightly blue hair. He looked a little non-mainstream. This fellow is quite handsome. He's just slightly less handsome than me, Wang Ting muttered. Dan Taixian. Everyone. They were used to Wang Ting's shamelessness, but at times, they would still feel speechless by his words. How thick was his skin? The martial warrior from Country Snow scanned the crowd before his gaze finally stopped in Country Xia's direction. He said, I want to challenge Country Xia. Zhu Yushao and the others were stunned. He wanted to challenge them. After witnessing Wang Ting and Fortes' match, the martial warriors from the other countries chose to evade Country Xia. After all, no one knew if they would meet Wang Ting. However, Zhu Yushao and the others reacted immediately. This was an exchange. It was impossible to leave Country Xia alone until the end. If they chose not to challenge Country Xia because they were afraid of being targeted by Wang Ting, Country Xia would win this competition effortlessly. This wasn't what the other countries wanted to see. However, when this martial warrior challenged them, his comrades looked flabbergasted. Even the leader of Country Snow's team lost his cool, shouting directly, Wait, Hilson, don't fool around. It was a little embarrassing for the leader to shout like this, but if his martial warrior was beaten into a pig's head like Fortes, it would be worse. Country Snow was a small country with a population of less than 30 million. Hence, there was a limited number of talents they could produce. He didn't want Hilson to fall against Country Xia. Everyone gave them a meaningful look when they saw this scene. It seemed like it wasn't a team decision and was the martial warrior's personal choice. This fellow was interesting. I'm not fooling around. Hilson shook his head and continued, I heard that there are many talents in Country Xia. My country might be small, but I want to witness the power of a great nation. Thus, please send your contestant. Let me see how the talents in Country Xia are. You. The leader of Country Snow was speechless. He wanted to stop the young man, but he couldn't find any valid reason to refute him. He dared to challenge Country Xia because he wanted to witness the power of a great nation. If he continued to stop him, he would seem like a cowardly leader. This Country Snow's martial warrior is scheming. Power of the great nation? Is he forcing me not to use my brick? Wang Ting sneered. Everyone was speechless. Why are you still thinking of your brick at a time like this? Actually, they weren't stupid. They also saw through the martial warrior's intention. He wanted to make a name for himself by using Country Xia. However, he didn't want to fight with Wang Ting, so he used this method. He was quite smart. Who's going? Dan Taixian smiled and asked with interest. This young man was provoking them directly. Who could bear with it? Wang Ting wanted to get up, but Zhu Yushao stood up first and said, Let me do it. Wang Ting, don't steal everyone's limelight. Besides, you're the leader. You need to be the last. There are many talents waiting for you. Smiling, Wang Ting sat down again and said, All right, you can go. At the same time, he scanned the person below with his spiritual sight. A hint of astonishment appeared in Wang Ting's eyes. He said, He's an ice element martial warrior. This was the first time he had met a Brigadier General stage ice element martial warrior. This martial warrior from Country Snow had become a tool to produce ice force attribute bubbles for him. An ice element martial warrior, Zhu Yushao exclaimed in surprise. How can you tell? I have my methods, Wang Ting said. Mutated forces are hard to deal with. Be careful. Okay. Zhu Yushao nodded grimly before jumping into the arena. Country Snow, Hilson. Country Xia, Zhu Yushao. Both of them introduced themselves and stared intently at each other. Boom. Suddenly, both of them moved. An ice spear appeared in the hands of Country Snow's martial warrior. He stabbed it out, sending numerous ice auras towards Zhu Yushao. Chapter 590 Ice Cocoon Physique. Zhu Yushao's expression changed slightly, and the force on her body exploded. Fire force. This was the reason why she wasn't afraid of the ice element. Zhu Yushao wielded the long sword in her hand. Flames engulfed the sword as it collided with the ice force. Ice and fire force erupted like a volcano, while scorching heat and freezing chill swept through the entire Colosseum. Half of the Colosseum was frozen. The other half was burnt because of the flames. Hilson disappeared on the spot when he noticed that his first attack didn't work. He attacked Zhu Yushao from the back. Zhu Yushao snorted. Moving her body and evading her opponent's attack, she slashed her sword down violently. Crimson-red sword glow cut through the air. Wherever it touched, the ice melted. Hilson's attacks were destroyed by her sword one after another. Zhu Yushao's gaze flickered. Her opponent wasn't receiving the attack directly. Instead, he was sprinting around and started circling Zhu Yushao. Boom, boom, boom. The two of them clashed and separated again and again. It was difficult to see who had the upper hand. Explosions were heard continuously. The martial warrior from Country Snow is quite strong, Zhao Yuanwu said seriously as he looked down. Don't underestimate any of these martial warriors, even those from small counties. They all have some extremely talented martial warriors. Dan Taixian glanced at everyone and said calmly. People like Ji Xiuming and Ren Qingcang were 9-star soldier-level martial warriors who hadn't reached the brigadier general stage. But they were still the cream of the crop, so they would have some pride in them. Hence, they looked down on small countries like Country Snow. However, after witnessing Hilson's ability, they stopped underestimating them. Can Zhu Yushao handle him? Ji Xiuming said. It's hard to say. Mu Zhiguo shook his head. This was a rare moment where he opened his mouth. Ice and fire restrict each other naturally. Their ability is also on par with each other, so it's hard to predict the winner. It will indeed be a little hard. Wang Teng's expression turned grim as he opened his mouth and looked below. Everyone was shocked. Wang Ting had displayed his foresight many times, and he was always right. Hence, when they heard his verdict, they were stunned. Boom. At this moment, the battle situation below changed. A powerful aura suddenly rose from Hilson's body. His ice force surged as if it had received a huge stimulation. Also, his hair had turned ice blue, dancing wildly in the air. If you have problems with this website, please continue reading your novel on our new website myboxnovel.com. Thanks. Even his eyes became ice blue. They gave off a cold aura, but at the same time, they looked magical and strange. The next instant, a large amount of ice force congregated into a layer of ice on the surface of Hilson's body, forming an ice armor. Zhu Yushao's expression changed. Fire force surged out of her body without restraint. However, Hilson wasn't afraid. He passed through the roaring flames. The scorching flames weren't able to melt the ice armor on his body at all. He went straight for Zhu Yushao, who was standing within the flames. Zhu Yushao was flabbergasted. She wanted to retreat, but it was too late. Boom. Hilson's punch landed on her body. Zhu Yushao froze for a split second before she took a few steps back. She gritted her teeth and forced herself to stop moving. She was half kneeling on the ground. Fart. She vomited a mouthful of blood. You lost, Hilson said in an indifferent voice. His entire body was covered with ice while his gaze was extremely cold. Zhu Yushao was unwilling to admit defeat, but she was at her wit's end. She stumbled as she stood up. She didn't have the ability to continue the battle. The other martial warriors were stunned. They looked at Hilson with a curious gaze, especially when they saw his current appearance. Was this a special kind of physique? To think that such a talent had appeared in this small country. The leader from Country Snow was dumbfounded. He didn't know anything about Hilson's physique. This fellow hid it very well. The martial warriors from Country Xia didn't look good either. At the same time, they were astounded. Wang Ting was right again. Could it be that he had noticed something? Hilson from Country Snow has won the battle. The high priest glanced at Hilson with a meaningful gaze as he announced the result. Thank you. Hilson smiled calmly, the ice around him disappearing. He bowed elegantly at the high priest and turned to walk towards his country's seats. Hilson, are you willing to become one of the holy knights? The high priest suddenly asked. Hilson stopped in his tracks. He turned to look at the high priest with a look of disbelief. This match was a specially planned act to make a name for himself. The result was expected. He had displayed his strength and won against a martial warrior from a large country. He became famous through a single match. However, he didn't expect to gain the attention of the high priest, much less receive an invitation from him. A holy knight of the Holy Temple. Did you know what that means? The Holy Temple was the most sacred place on the continent and was widely known in the entire world. It wasn't an easy feat to become a holy knight. Yet the high priest was offering him a position. Hilson felt as if he was dreaming. Happiness came too suddenly, catching him off his guard. He wasn't the only one. The other people were flabbergasted too. The entire Colosseum turned eerily silent before a commotion erupted. A holy knight. Hilson is going to prosper. All he did was defeat a martial warrior from country Shia. Why does the high priest have such high hopes for him? This isn't as simple as defeating a warrior from country Shia. The most important thing is, he showed off his special ice physique. He's so lucky. Sigh, opportunities are given to people who are prepared. If Hilson wasn't bold enough to challenge country Shia, he wouldn't have this chance. Everyone was discussing loudly. Some admired him while others were jealous. All the martial warriors wished that they would have this opportunity too. The high priest wasn't surprised by the reaction. Based on the status of the Holy Temple, everyone would react in a similar manner when they heard this piece of news. Hilson was still able to maintain his composure, which was commendable. He smiled and continued, "What do you think, Hilson? Have you made your decision?" "Yes, I'm willing." Hilson finally regained his senses. He suppressed the happiness in his heart and nodded fervently. "Very good. However, you will only be a reserve when you enter the Holy Temple. If you want to become a holy knight, you need to undergo challenges and tests," the high priest said. "Yes, I understand." Hilson knocked his fist on his chest and gave a knight's salute. His expression was firm to show his fearless heart. "You can leave. Look for me after the duel," the high priest nodded in satisfaction. Hilson was elated. He walked towards his country's stands, welcoming the envious gazes from his fellow countrymen. On the other hand, Zhu Yushao's situation was a stark contrast. Her defeat made Hilson's victory seem even brighter. "It's all right," Dan Taixian went forward and comforted her. Zhu Yushao's expression was bitter. She shook her head. "I'm fine. I'm just a little unwilling to accept defeat. Hilson is stepping on us to attain his glory," Chu Fei and the others said unhappily with a grim expression. "I will find him during the next match," Yang Bo said. "You might not be his match," Mu Zhiguo shook his head and said. "Let me do it. I'm interested in ice element martial warriors," Wang Ting said. Dan Taixian was surprised. Others might not be aware, but she knew that Wang Ting had ice force. However, this fellow's ice force wasn't as powerful as Hilson's. Could he do it? She shook her head again and chuckled. She was thinking too much. Wang Ting didn't just possess ice force. Despite having a special physique, Hilson might have to suffer a defeat in front of Wang Ting. "Are you confident?" Mu Zhiguo didn't know anything, so he asked in concern. "Don't worry," Wang Ting replied calmly. While speaking, he had already released his spiritual power and picked up all the attribute bubbles in the arena. Fire Force *225 Fire Sword Conscious *70 Ice Force *320 Ice Cocoon Physique *10 Ice Spear Conscious *45 A meaningful smile appeared at the edge of Wang Teng's lips. Ice Cocoon Physique. This was a new physique. Moreover, it was of the ice element. After obtaining Hilson's physique, he decided that he should let the guy be happy for a while longer. He would be crying soon. Ice Cocoon Physique 10,500 Wang Ting scanned the explanation of the physique that had appeared on his attributes panel. He was elated. He sensed the changes in his body carefully and realized that his sensitivity towards ice force had gotten sharper. Memories of the characteristic changes of ice force appeared in his mind. This change was how Hilson had managed to execute the ice armor skill just now. Now, Wang Ting knew everything Hilson knew. Also, if he filled up the points of his ice cocoon physique, Hilson might not be his match. The feeling of using other people's talent to surpass them was amazing. Besides this, he received an ice spear conscious. Wang Ting didn't have this conscious before. He was extremely satisfied. Although he hadn't fought with Hilson yet, he already had such a huge gain. If he really started the fight, he might be able to get more things out of him. He looked at Hilson in the distance and smiled uncontrollably. Hilson, who was feeling happy, suddenly shuddered. He felt an evil intention engulfing his body. "Hilson, what's wrong?" a martial warrior from Country Snow asked. "It's all right. It might be my illusion," Hilson shook his head and replied. "You possess an ice element physique, but you have never executed it for so many years." "You hid it really well," the leader of Country Snow said. "I'm sorry. It wasn't on purpose. My instructors were afraid that I will get pressurized, so they asked me not to use it. In the country, there was no need for me to use my physique. However, the situation is different now. All the talented martial warriors in the world are gathered here. There's no point for me to hide it anymore," Hilson explained. The leader from Country Snow nodded. He understood. Country Snow was a small place. If Hilson had displayed his physique too early, he might not have had a chance to grow up. Chapter 591. Oh my, you damaged my head. If anyone wanted to challenge Hilson, they would have to wait for another round. This was a rule of the Global Exchange Conference. After one round of duel, they would rest for a round to prevent people from challenging the same person to wear him down. Of course, if the person was willing to fight, no one would stop him. After Hilson, a martial warrior from Country Neon entered the Colosseum. Everyone's gaze was attracted by him. This was a pretty and cute young lady, but that wasn't the main point. The most important thing was, she was only 1.5 meters in height. She looked petite. Although she kept a straight face, it wasn't stern. Instead, it looked a little cute and absent-minded. Along with her face that still had some baby fat, she gave people a cute and naive feeling. This young lady from Country Neon looked very exquisite. Wang Ting's gaze turned strange. The world was huge. There were all kinds of strange people, including women. At this moment, the lady below opened her mouth. Her voice was a little hoarse and cute. It was quite unique. "Shunai Tongji will like to challenge a martial warrior from the White Eagle Nation." The moment she finished speaking, the martial warriors from the other nations were shocked. They discussed in low voices. This martial warrior from Country Neon wanted to challenge the White Eagle Nation. Country Neon had always been following the White Eagle Nation. Everyone knew about this. But this time, they wanted to challenge the White Eagle Nation during this exchange. Were they crazy? Chimph, interesting. A smile appeared at the edge of Gerald's mouth. His interest was ignited. Chimph, indeed. There are many unexpected events during this year's exchange. Arnold laughed in a low voice. He was happy to see someone creating trouble for the White Eagle Nation. Yoke's expression turned ugly once again. He stared in the direction of Country Neon, his gaze suddenly turning dangerous. Chimph, how bold. When did Country Neon have the courage to bare their fangs at them? The leader of Country Neon, Shanben Quan, was dumbfounded. "Boss, this has nothing to do with me." Challenging White Eagle Nation was Shunai Tongji's own decision. "Tongji, you're making things difficult for me. I thought we agreed to challenge Country Spade. Why did it become the White Eagle Nation? You can't do this. You're killing me." Just like Hilson, Shunai Tongji had made her own decision. The people from the White Eagle Nation didn't care about what he thought. It was a fact that Shunai Tongji wanted to challenge their nation. If they didn't give Country Neon a good lesson, they would lose their reputation. Yoke glanced at the people behind him. Kyun, Marsha, and the others immediately understood what he meant. Kyun stepped out, sniggered, and said, "I'll go. Let me play with the little girl from Country Neon. Be careful. Don't fail this easy task. She might have some trump cards since she has dared to challenge us." Yoke nodded and said, "Don't worry. Do you think a country following us like a dog can stir up any huge trouble?" Kyun replied nonchalantly. As he spoke, he walked down the spectators' stand and entered the arena. "Who gave you the courage to challenge us?" Kyun sneered as he looked at Kyun. "Shunai Tongji, please," Shunai Tongji said calmly without any expressions. Kyun suddenly felt as if he was punching a sack of cotton. The veins on his forehead popped out, and he yelled, Stop the bullshit. I will make you understand the consequences of challenging us. Boom. He stomped his feet on the ground and charged towards Shinai Tongji. A battle mace had appeared in his hand. Laughing hideously, he raised his mace and smashed it towards Shinai Tongji's head. What a ruthless man. Kyun didn't hold back just because she was a young girl. If she was hit with that mace, no matter how beautiful her face was, it would turn into a pile of minced meat. Wang Ting touched his chin and clicked his tongue. This Kyun must be single. Everyone, Dan Taixian and the others were speechless. They felt that Wang Ting's thinking was extremely strange. Was this a question of whether he was single? He should be wondering if her head would break apart. Although everyone was shocked by Kyun's viciousness, the situation in the arena caused them to widen their eyes. Shinai Tongji stood on the spot absent-mindedly. Not caring about the battle mace above her head, she stared at Kyun calmly. The next moment, bang! Visit Ria Del. Me for extra chapters. A clear sound resounded. Shinai Tongji's small head exploded. She really exploded. Red and white particles splattered everywhere. The scene was too gruesome, causing many people to retch. Kyun, who caused this scene, was shocked. He looked at the battle mace in his hand before looking at the small figure whose head had disappeared. His mind wasn't working. She died. He was in disbelief. It was such a simple win. He hadn't used any strength at all. The martial warriors from the other nations were dumbstruck. This was the first time such a bloody scene had occurred during this event. This situation had never happened in the past. Zhu Yushao covered her mouth immediately. She had lost her voice. This, Ji Xiuming, Chu Fei, and the others jumped up from their seats, their expressions changing tremendously. How's that possible? Did she go up to die? Yang Bo asked. What on earth is happening? If she went up for a duel, why didn't she resist? Is their difference so huge? Zhao Yuanwu asked curiously. Don't worry, the match has just started, Wang Ting said with a chuckle. They turned to Wang Ting. The match had just started. Did Wang Ting hurt his brain? The lady was dead. How could the match continue? What do you mean? Zhu Yushao was puzzled. This is just an illusion. You were fooled, Wang Ting said. Illusion? Everyone's expression changed slightly. That's impossible. Even if it's an illusion, how can we not notice it? The spiritual realm of this martial warrior is very high. It's normal that you all were fooled, Wang Ting said. His gaze turned strange when he looked at Shinai Tongji below. Spiritual power. Shinai Tongji was a divine spirit master too. She had learned some special skills. Other people might not be able to see through it, but it was a piece of cake for Wang Ting. Everyone looked down after hearing this. At this moment, changes started to happen to Shinai Tongji's body. Her crushed head resumed its original form like a video rewinding itself. The red and white particles splattered everywhere went back to their original position. Then, Shinai Tongji's baby face appeared in front of Kyun once again. Kyun took a step back unconsciously when he saw this. He looked as if he had seen a ghost. What are you? He screamed in astonishment. Shinai Tongji tilted her head and her head dropped to the ground with a slap. It rolled a few times and landed beside Kyun's feet. The eyes looked up at Kyun, and the calm voice was heard again. Hey, you damaged my head. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Tip: you can use left, right, A and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters. Chapter 592 Ferocious when attacking, timid when running away F***K. Kyun had a breakdown when he saw such a gory scene. He cursed uncontrollably. He lifted his feet and kicked Shinai Tongji's head. Bang! The head turned into a ball of black shadow and disappeared in the distance. No one could find it anymore. Kyun panted heavily. What happened gave him a rude shock. He could still feel the lingering fear. Damn it! How did a match turn into a horror show? No matter how tough a man was, he would still be fearful of such a chilly scene. Why did you kick my head? Right then, the calm voice echoed once again. This time, the voice sounded beside Kyun's ear. Also, when he heard it, he felt a breath landing on his ear. It felt a little cold. Kyun froze. He turned his head slowly and saw, a head was on his shoulder, with blood dripping down its neck. His eyes met the head's cold gaze. Kyun felt his heart skipping a beat. His head turned numb, and all the hairs on his body stood on end. He wanted to curse, but the words were stuck in his throat. He couldn't say anything. Die. He raised his right hand and punched the head on his left shoulder. Bang! Shunai Tongji's head exploded once again. This time, the red and white particles splattered on his face. Kyun was flabbergasted. When did he become so strong? He just wanted to hit the head away. Why did it explode? He knew that if he smashed the head, he would dirty himself. He wasn't stupid. However, the head exploded, and he still had intimate contact with him. Smelling the strong stench of blood, Kyun gulped. He felt that he was going to vomit his food out. Talented martial warriors like them had seen blood before, but this was the first time he had experienced and tasted a headshot right beside him. It didn't feel good. In the spectators' stand, everyone felt a chill down their spines. Then, they gave Kyun a look of pity. How tragic if they were in his place, they wouldn't be able to handle the gore either. At this moment, most of the people noticed the problem. Shunai Tongji didn't die. She was using a special method to fool everyone. Kyun, who was a participant in the match, got affected the most. He couldn't pull himself out of the illusion and was being led by his nose. Yoke and the others frowned. They wanted to remind Kyun, but they couldn't. The event would lose its purpose if they did. The high priest wouldn't allow them to break the rules either. Wang Teng chuckled. Kyun will probably have a psychological trauma after this match. Everyone felt speechless when they heard his happy laughter. This fellow was so narrow-minded. He must have taken it to heart when Kyun mocked him in the past. In the arena, Shunai Tongji's head appeared beside Kyun once again. It floated in mid-air while dripping blood. It was like a spirit hovering around Kyun, her cold voice resounding around him. Kyun was going crazy. His eyes were bloodshot, and he aimlessly swung his battle mace around him. He smashed Tongji's head again and again. He had mutated. Black fur covered his entire body. Muscles bulged out, and the aura around him was extremely frightening. Come out. I know that everything is fake. Come out. Kyun wasn't an idiot. He knew that he had walked into his opponent's illusion trap. But realizing it and deciphering it were different matters. He couldn't find where the real Shunai Tongji was. Also, he was at the edge of breaking down after suffering all the pestering and stimulations. Once he mutated, his physical ability was strengthened, but his mind became more easily affected. The psychological trauma in him expanded without stopping. You noticed it. All right, I shall fulfill your wish. Shunai Tongji's figure suddenly appeared in front of him. Kyun was elated. He grinned hideously and smashed his mace down furiously. Bang! Shunai Tongji's entire body exploded. Fresh red blood splattered on Kyun. Fake again. He was stunned. His pupils constricted, and blood capillaries seemed to have covered his entire eyeball. Visit Ria Del. Me for extra chapters. A sadistic smile appeared on his face. He had lost his mind completely. His confidence was destroyed. As a brigadier general stage martial warrior, it was almost impossible for his confidence to collapse. But after he mutated, his mentality was getting impacted by the wild beast's consciousness. Hence, he collapsed after Tongji's additional mental stimulation. Roar! Kyun bellowed in anger. He started mutating again. From his gaze, you could tell that he had lost his consciousness. Only the ruthlessness of a wild beast was left. More fur started growing and covered his entire body. Even his face started changing. He was becoming a black bear. Before this, he was 50% mutated. Now, he was at 80% and above. This is bad. Yoke's expression changed. He sprung up immediately. Kyun is losing control, Marsha said grimly. Damn it, that idiot. How did that young lady from Country Neon force him to this stage? Did his mental training go down the drain? Yoke cursed. His face was black. Marsha paid a silent tribute to Kyun. This martial warrior from country Neon wasn't easy to deal with. If she met her, she might end up like Kyun. Unfortunately, Yoke didn't want to listen to reason. Kyun couldn't control himself, so that was his fault. Shall we admit defeat? Marsha asked. Yoke's expression kept changing. In the end, he gritted his teeth and said, "Let's wait. We can use this chance to kill that martial warrior from country Neon. We will control Kyun after that. The risk is high. If we act a little too late, Kyun might never come back," Marsha said, her expression changing slightly. Chapter 593 Spiritual Illusion. The bear was afraid of bees. It was weird to see such a scene during the exchange event. The martial warriors from all over the world fell into a strange silence as they watched Kyun being chased by bees in the Colosseum. Yoke's mouth twitched as he thought about finding a hole and burying himself in it. It was too embarrassing. Why? Why was the White Eagle Nation the laughingstock in this year's exchange event? Had he known, he wouldn't have become the leader of the team to only be ridiculed. Yoke was overwhelmed with regret. However, this was something that he had fought for, and it was too late to say anything else. Over at Country Shia's spectators' stand, everyone was having a good laugh. The White Eagle Nation is suffering a huge setback this time. Yang Bo snickered. That was hilarious. Using bees to deal with that bear, Zhao Yuanwu said. Shunai Tongji is quite smart to have thought of that. Chu Fei shook his head and smiled. She looks very difficult to deal with. Zhu Yushao commented. That's right. She's not easy to deal with. Everyone nodded in agreement with a serious expression on their faces. Boom. In the Colosseum, Kyun was powerless and couldn't resist anymore. He was rolling all over the ground, but he couldn't get rid of the bees. He kept howling miserably. Soon, the cries stopped. Kyun had passed out. Shunai Tongji appeared, and the bees vanished. However, Kyun's face was covered with bumps as if he had really been stung by bees. It was unreal and puzzling. Everyone saw this scene and became solemn. The high priest immediately announced Country Neon's victory. However, Country Neon's Shanben Quan couldn't feel happy at all. That was because Yoke was glaring at him fiercely with a dark expression. Shanben Quan shivered and felt bitterness in his heart. Don't look at me, it really isn't my fault. When Shunai Tongji returned to the spectators' stand, Shanben Quan gave her a resentful look. He suppressed his anger and asked, Tongji, why did you do that? Do what? Shunai Tongji looked at him innocently. Shanben Quan felt powerless and said with a sad face, My little princess, the White Eagle Nation is not a country we can afford to provoke. Oh. Shunai Tongji nodded. Shanben Quan, oh, and then? Say something. What's with that oh? What do you mean? Shanben Quan was going crazy, but there was nothing he could do to Shunai Tongji. All he could do was to hide away in a corner and draw circles. Country Shia's spectators stand. Wang Ting's gaze swept downwards, and he collected the attribute bubbles in the Colosseum using his spiritual power. Earth Force *345 Origin of Life *12 Emperor Realm Spirit *50 Spiritual Illusion *20 Poison Force *125 Wang Ting's eyes flickered slightly when he saw what he had collected. There were 345 points of Earth Force. Sure enough, a Brigadier General stage martial warrior dropped quite a lot of attribute bubbles. Of course, the 12 points of Origin of Life were the most important. There were more points compared to what the previous White Eagle Nation martial warriors had dropped. At this time, he wanted to ask how many years Kyun could live. Unlucky child. At best, when other people fought, they would bleed and get injured. If it was serious, they would die. However, Kyun was different. Mutating meant that he would lose his life. The Gene martial warriors were nothing but the same. The drawbacks were too great. Of course, Wang Ting hoped that more Gene martial warriors would appear. It would be beneficial to him anyway. Next was 50 points of Emperor Realm Spirit, which was somewhat beyond his expectations. It was incredible for Shunai Tongji to have attained such a level of spirit. Was she cheating too? He didn't know what her age was, but she looked young. If she was the same age as Wang Ting, it would be amazing. The remaining attribute bubbles surprised Wang Teng again. Spiritual illusion and poison force. Visit Ria Me for extra chapters. Spiritual illusion was a spiritual ability. It must be the same ability that Shenai Tongji used in the previous match. Wang Teng's eyes flickered as he digested the memories in his mind. He had already mastered the spiritual ability. Spiritual illusion, 10-100, well-versed, 20 points of spiritual illusion allowed him to break through the foundation state and achieve some proficiency. Now, he had mastered 2 spiritual skills, spirit penetration and spiritual illusion. He had more tricks up his sleeve. Finally, it was the poison force. Till now, Wang Ting had only seen the poison force on Lin Chuxia. Shenai Tongji was the second person to have it. However, Shenai Tongji's poison talent obviously couldn't be compared with Lin Chuxia's. Lin Chuxia had the demon lotus poison body, and with her talent, it would be extremely rare for someone to match up to her. At this time, Wang Ting couldn't help but look in the direction of Country Neon. No matter what, Shenai Tongji should not be underestimated. The next moment, a smile appeared on his face. The exchange event was getting more and more interesting. Shenai Tongji seemed to have sensed Wang Ting's gaze and turned to look in his direction. However, Wang Ting had already retracted his gaze and was walking towards the Colosseum. Wang Ting will like to challenge Hilson of Country Snow. Wang Ting looked towards Country Snow's spectators' stand. At this moment, the expressions of everyone in Country Snow changed. Hilson's expression was even uglier as he looked at Wang Ting. It was like he had stepped on a pile of dung. This bastard must have done it on purpose. He had defeated a Country Xia martial warrior and attained glory by stepping on them. Now Wang Ting specially came over to challenge him. But there was nothing he could do. Since he had shown his talents in the exchange event, there would be many challengers waiting to test him. He could either stand and walk till the end or be defeated and left behind. There was no other possibility. The high priest looked at Hilson and nodded at him. Hilson knew that it was unavoidable. He had just joined the Holy Temple. If he avoided the battle, he would not only embarrass himself but also taint the reputation of the Holy Temple. The consequences would be greater than anything else. Hilson scoffed. A challenge it shall be. He might be able to beat Wang Ting. Everyone was reluctant to have a match against Wang Ting. They were worried that he would humiliate them with his brick. However, he didn't believe that Wang Ting would do such a thing to a member of the Holy Temple. Wang Ting, please. Wang Ting giggled as he saw Hilson coming towards him. Hilson looked constipated. What are you laughing at? That smile gave him a creepy feeling. Hilson. He didn't say anything unnecessary. After speaking his name, he grabbed his spear, pointing it at Wang Ting. Come, let's have a good fight. A good fight? Wang Ting laughed. I'm afraid you won't have a chance once I make a move. How dare you? This bastard didn't take him seriously. Hilson's face was filled with rage as he stepped forward. The spear stabbed out and shot across the sky, striking directly at Wang Ting's vital points. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Tip: you can use left, right, A and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters. Chapter 594. Hes an actor. Spear glow shot into the air, soaring towards him with a cold aura. In response, Wang Ting punched his fist out without a change in expression. It was a simple punch. He didn't employ any battle techniques, just using pure strength. Boom! When the fist and the spear glow collided, the ice formed by the spear cracked with a bang. It turned into ice shavings floating in the air. Hilson felt the violent strength coming from his opponent. His expression changed slightly, and he took half a step back. He was at a disadvantage in the first exchange. Wang Teng's ability was as simple as it looked. Hilson turned serious and activated his ice cocoon physique without any hesitation. Ice force surged out of his body and gathered into an ice armor around him. The leader of Country Snow was stunned. The other martial warriors from other nations were surprised too. They started discussing in low voices. Hilson used his special physique so early in the match. It looks like Wang Ting is giving him a huge pressure. Wang Ting isn't a normal martial warrior. He seems very strong. He was playing when he used the brick as his weapon, right? Is he showing his true strength now? Anyway, have you noticed how young Wang Ting is? Everyone was shocked when they heard this. That was when they realized that Wang Ting seemed much younger than most of the martial warriors present. Almost all of them were around 25 when they entered the Brigadier General stage. Even the younger ones would only be 1 or 2 years younger. However, they didn't know if Wang Ting was even 20 years old yet. Gerald and Valeria's expressions started to change a little. Tongji, this talent from country Xia seems younger than you. Shan Ben Quan said to Tongji beside him. Yes. Surprisingly, Shanai Tongji didn't refute. She nodded with a grim expression. Country Xia is an interesting place. Unfortunately, Shan Ben Quan seemed a little forlorn as he sighed. Although he didn't continue his sentence, Shanai Tongji understood what he meant. Ever since the new era started, Country Neon chose to follow the White Eagle Nation. Hence, their relationship with Country Xia was a little stiff. They weren't on friendly terms. If they had chosen to follow Country Xia at the start, the situation might have been different now. In the Colosseum, Wang Ting was elated when he saw Hilson's change. He could collect more attribute bubbles. Ice Cocoon Physique *10 Ice Cocoon Physique *8 Ice Force *112 Wang Ting sensed the changes in his body. His eyes were filled with motherly love as he looked at Hilson again. Besides having a slightly scheming heart, this man was a good person. Beep, a good man card. Hilson glared at Wang Ting emotionlessly with his ice blue eyes. He didn't know that he was given a good man card by his opponent. You're very strong, but I won't lose. His expression was firm and his gaze resolute. Wang Ting remained composed. Being confident was good, but you needed to know who you were facing. This fellow was still too young. Hilson raised his eyebrows when he saw the calm expression on Wang Ting's face. His opponent wasn't stimulated by his words at all. It seemed as if he was looking down on him. A tinge of anger rose in his heart uncontrollably. Boom. The ice force in his body surged out. He stopped talking nonsense and congregated his ice force on his long spear, forming a thick layer of ice. He stabbed his spear out. Ice spear conscious. Let me see if you can destroy my spear with your fist. Hilson screamed in anger. His body seemed to have crossed through space as he arrived in front of Wang Ting in an instant. Boom. Wang Ting remained calm and raised his head. The spear glow grew bigger and bigger in his pupils. He only raised his fist slowly when the spear was directly in front of him. It was a serious punch. Crimson-red flames enveloped his fist as it collided with the ice on the spear. Once again, Wang Ting used his physical body to take the ice spear attack from Hilson. A real man must be bold. Disbelief flashed past Hilson's eyes. He didn't expect Wang Ting to use his fist to resist his attack. Was this fellow so confident? Boom. Wang Ting's fist aura collided into the spear glow, and a loud explosion occurred. Force swept through the entire arena, blowing dust into the air. Everyone squinted as they looked at the stage. Suddenly, right in the center of the collision, a soft crack was heard. Hilson's expression changed. His pupils constricted, and he was thunderstruck. How is this possible? Visit Riadel. Me for extra chapters. Cracks had appeared on the ice around his spear. They grew bigger, and ice blocks started dropping. Bang! During a certain moment, the ice shattered completely. Opposite him, a scorching and powerful fist was roaring towards him. Hilson shook his body and forcefully dispersed the fist aura. This was only the residual force, so it wasn't enough to break the defense of his ice armor. He heaved a sigh of relief uncontrollably. However, his happiness didn't last long. Wang Ting suddenly disappeared on the spot and dashed towards him like a ray of light. Hilson's expression changed. He soared into the sky and evaded Wang Ting's attack. He had experienced Wang Ting's frightening fist force, so he was wary of it. He didn't want to face it head-on. But he could never expect how fast Wang Ting could be. As long as he wanted, his opponent wouldn't be able to escape. The next moment, Wang Ting appeared directly in front of Hilson. An evil smile was pasted on his face. He looked like a gangster teasing a beautiful lady. Don't run. Do you know what's give and take? Have a taste of my fist too. The second he finished, he threw his fist at his opponent. Hilson's expression changed completely. He couldn't react to the fast punch and was hit in the stomach. Boom. When the punch landed, his body curled up like a prawn. His eyes popped out as the terrifying strength released itself entirely on his body. Swoosh. He was thrown back like a rocket. He only managed to stop after flying out for more than 10 meters. Cough. Hilson was coughing violently, and blood dripped down the edge of his lips. He wiped it away and scoffed. You can't break my ice armor. Oh really? Wang Ting smiled gently. Crack. A crisp and clear crack sounded in his ears as if it was pre-planned. Hilson's pupils constricted. He lowered his head and took a look, only to notice a crack appearing on the ice armor in front of his chest. Your turtle shell is a little weak. My punch was so gentle, Wang Ting said. Hilson's face turned black. What do you mean by turtle shell? His armor was so handsome, but this fellow said that it was a turtle shell. What kind of eyesight was that? However, it was a fact that he had cracked his ice armor. This fellow's strength was frightening as for his claim of a gentle punch, Hilson didn't believe him at all. Since he had broken his ice armor, he must have used his full force. This fellow was an actor. Come, let me give you a few more punches. Wang Ting didn't care about Hilson's expression. He disappeared again and hurled himself at his opponent. Again, Hilson's face turned green. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Tip: you can use left, right, A and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters. Chapter 595 Dowei Tianlong, Go. Hilson's heart pounded furiously. A layer of ice congregated on the long spear in his hand once again, turning it into a giant ice spear as he welcomed Wang Ting's attack. He didn't dare to let Wang Ting's fist land on his body again. His organs had almost flown out from the punch just now. Was there a monster hiding in this fellow's body? How could this body, which didn't seem muscular, contain so much strength? Of all of the martial warriors he had met in the past, no one surpassed Wang Ting in terms of strength. Boom. Wang Ting didn't even glance at the ice spear. He punched it without thinking. Anything that blocks my path will be smashed into pieces. This is my ninja path. This is my martial arts path. The ice spear cracked once again, and ice flakes flew everywhere. Wang Ting turned into a ray of light and flashed through the ice flakes in the air. He went straight for Hilson's body. Boom, boom, boom. He lashed his fists out, gifting his opponent's body with his flames. Hilson was like a sandbag as his body swung to and fro in the air. He had no chance of retaliating. Anyone who saw this scene would feel pity for him. How tragic. Gerald from the Large Eagle Nation felt his eyes twitching. He was shocked by Wang Ting's direct and rough attacking methods. First, the brick, and now, his fist. Thinking back on it, this Wang Ting was a violent man. Valeria from Country Boar was elated. Her eyes were shining, and the muscles on her body were dancing. She said to the person beside her, Darwin, I think I found my true love. This is my charming prince. It's Prince Charming. The leader of Country Boar called Darwin felt speechless. Then, he exclaimed in surprise, You have feelings for him? Only a man like him deserves to be my partner, right? The King Kong Barbie flexed her muscles and said. The outstanding men in our nation will be sad, Darwin said dejectedly. Chimph, they can't even win against me. What right do they have to be my man? In their dreams, Valeria said with contempt. Then, she stared lovingly at Wang Ting. This was how frightening this fierce nation was. In the Colosseum, Wang Ting, who was focused on beating his opponent, suddenly shuddered. He felt an evil intention swimming around him. What happened? He had a bad feeling. Wang Ting's spiritual power was powerful, so he could danger beforehand. He felt that danger had laid its eyes on him. This is a good chance. Hilson grabbed the chance when Wang Ting lost his concentration and retreated in a hurry. A large part of his ice armor had cracked, and several ice plates were hanging on his body. His handsome and glorious appearance was gone while his face was bruised and swollen. He was in a bad state. Here, he ran away. Wang Ting stared at him, his gaze turning dangerous. The prey was already in his hands. How could he let him run away? Hilson panted heavily. His expression was ugly and grim. Wang Teng's ability exceeded his expectation, but it wasn't appropriate for him to admit defeat. He had just joined the Holy Temple and was at the peak of his life. If he admitted defeat so easily, his impression in the High Priest's eyes would drop. Hence, he gritted his teeth firmly. His gaze turned resolute as he activated his ice cocoon physique to its maximum. He released all the ice force in his body. Boom! A bone-piercing chill spread in the arena. The air seemed frozen, with layers of frost appearing. Snow started floating down the sky. The force cultivation of a Brigadier General stage martial warrior was extremely powerful. In addition, he possessed a special physique, so the commotion he caused was naturally huge. Wang Teng glanced at him in astonishment. He wanted to attack, but he stopped midway. How could he get more attribute bubbles from this guy? Wait for him to release his full strength and squeeze him until he had nothing more. This was the correct method. No one knew what Wang Teng was thinking. They were staring at the sky above the Colosseum with shimmering eyes. Wang Teng seems confident, Gerald said with interest. Hilson is strong. His special physique makes him very powerful. But, he couldn't do anything in Wang Teng's hands, Arnold said. Wang Teng is strong, and his speed is unbelievable. Hilson is being suppressed in these areas, Gerald said after some contemplation. Continue watching. Hilson might go all out now. What happens now will affect the result of this battle. If Wang Ting can't withstand the attack, all his efforts will be in vain. Arnold nodded and looked up at the sky. Tongji, who do you think will win? Shanben Quan always asked Shanai Tongji when he couldn't make a decision. This was no exception. Wang Teng, Shanai Tongji replied. Oh, are you very certain? Shanben Quan asked in surprise. I can't see through him, but I can see through Hilson, Shanai Tongji replied. That Wang Teng is really mysterious. Shanben Quan was astounded. In the spectators' stand, Zhu Yushao was watching the battle attentively. She said, Hilson's ice force has a strange power in it. We mustn't underestimate the attack this time. Can Wang Teng block it? Don't worry, this is just a warm-up. Wang Teng hasn't taken it seriously until now. Dan Taixian shook her head and spoke in a helpless tone. The others were flabbergasted. Hilson had activated his special physique, but Dan Taixian was telling them that Wang Ting was just warming up. Was she serious? Everyone was in disbelief. They felt that Dan Taixian was just exaggerating. Anyway, none of us know which stage Wang Teng is at, right? Chu Fei asked. In terms of cultivation level, he's at the Brigadier General stage. However, I'm not sure about his true battle power. Dan Taixian shook her head and replied. Brigadier General stage. Visit Ria Del. Me for extra chapters. Brigadier General stage before 20 years old. And his battle power might be higher. They glanced at one another. No words could express their emotions. Did Wang Ting start cultivating when he was in his mother's womb? The ice force in the sky was getting thicker. It gathered above Hilson's head, forming rays of ice glows. They covered the entire sky. Looking at it was enough to turn everyone's head numb. Who could withstand this powerful attack from all directions? Hilson found it a little strenuous when he used this skill. Although his face was pale, his gaze was chilly. He shouted, Ice Arrow Rain. In an instant, the ice rays dropped and flew towards Wang Ting from all directions. Swoosh, 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 continuous sounds of explosions rang through the Colosseum. The martial warriors inside became serious. This momentum was intense and terrifying. Wang Ting looked at the ice arrows that had arrived in front of him in a split second. His gaze became firm, and a scorching heat escaped from his body. Green flames swarm out, forming a lifelike giant green dragon in the sky. Dawei Tianlong, go. 1. Though Wang Ting was shouting like an idiot, his presence was domineering. Green flames blossomed around him like a lotus, making him look like a deity descending on earth, holy and immortal. After he shouted, the green dragon roared towards the sky and flew towards the endless rain of ice. Flames spurted out from the giant dragon's mouth, submerging all the ice glows. Boom! Instantly, the ice glows shattered. This terrifying attack was destroyed by Wang Ting's flames. Roar! The green giant dragon hovered in the air above Hilson. Looking magnificent, it lowered its head and stared at Hilson as. Hilson was dumbfounded. He was in a daze. He stared absent-mindedly at the green dragon above him as he felt the scorching heat. His body was drenched in sweat. The other martial warriors were astounded too. Their eyes flickered violently as they watched this scene. Wang Ting was very strong. For the first time, the high priest turned solemn. He looked at Wang Ting meaningfully. Country Xia. The high priest muttered to himself. What an unbelievable ancient country. But what does Dawei Tianlong mean? Is it the name of the move or an incantation? He felt a little puzzled as he wondered about this. In the spectators' stand, Dan Taixian was feeling speechless. Her head turned numb, and she felt goosebumps all over her body. Dawei Tianlong. Wang Ting, why don't you kill yourself? Dan Taixian felt that she was going to go crazy soon. She had received a huge stimulation and couldn't look at Wang Ting straight in the face anymore. She wished that she could grab him and beat him up furiously until he didn't dare to say such things again. 1. This phrase comes from a Chinese movie where the priest chants this phrase when catching a demon. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Tip: you can use left, right, A and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters. Chapter 596. We are both geniuses, can't you show me some respect? Dan Taixian and the others were looking at the green dragon. They felt that it was extremely majestic and was great for putting on a show. But why did he have to shout Dawei Tianlong? No one could stand the childishness. It suffocated everyone. Everyone in country Xia was utterly defeated by Wang Ting. He was always fooling around and giving people headaches. It's too embarrassing. Zhao Yuanwu's mouth twitched. I'm embarrassed to be associated with him, Ren Qingcang said with a look of disgust. Although Ji Xiuming and the rest also felt that Wang Ting had embarrassed everyone, it wasn't nice to say those words directly. Several people glanced at Zhao Yuanwu and Ren Qingcang. They knew that both of them held some grudges against Wang Ting, but this was going too far. Haven't you seen the expressions of those foreigners? Zhu Yushao defended Wang Ting and reminded both of them. What do you mean? Zhao Yuanwu asked. See for yourself, Zhu Yushao snapped back. Everyone looked over. All the foreigners had a bewildered expression. They didn't understand, but it looked impressive. With the green dragon in play, Wang Ting's show seemed to have succeeded. Zhao Yuanwu, Ren Qingcang, everyone else, this works. Wang Ting wasn't being an embarrassment, he was being a show-off. Zhao Yuanwu's mouth twitched, and he completely shut his trap. Ren Qingcang snorted softly and stopped talking. The expression on his face was interesting as well. It wasn't just them. Even Mu Zhigua and the others were impressed. Thinking about it carefully, these foreigners didn't understand their language very well. Hence, they wouldn't understand how childish it was. Zhu Yushao saw everyone's expression and felt ashamed. However, she did feel that she didn't let Wang Ting down. Since he stood up for her, she was trying to defend his reputation. Otherwise, she wouldn't have said such words against her will. Although the foreigners didn't understand what he was saying, it was still childish. Remembering that embarrassing scene again, Zhu Yushao's heart shuddered. Her goosebumps made an appearance again. Oh my god, Wang Ting isn't human. In the Colosseum, the green giant dragon was hovering in the sky as it looked down at Hilson. The tension in the atmosphere was at its limit. At this point of the match, there was almost no suspense. So, what would Hilson choose? Admit defeat or a fight to the death? All the martial warriors understood his situation very well. He had just been selected by the Holy Temple, and before he could enjoy the spring breeze, he ended up in such a disastrous situation. Who could stand it? At this time, some people pitied him, while others were gloating. Hilson's face was pale, and his lips were squirming. He couldn't utter the word defeat. Wang Teng's eyes flashed, and he suddenly vanished. Hilson's expression changed drastically. F***K, this despicable bastard didn't even give him time to catch his breath. The next moment, Wang Teng appeared in front of Hilson and grinned at him. Then, a golden light flashed in his hand. Hilson was horrified. He finally remembered something. Just as he was about to shout the words "admit defeat" and opened his mouth, bang, it was too late. The golden light kissed his face, right on the dead center, and shut his mouth tightly. Gasp. Everyone saw this scene and took a deep breath of cold air. It hurts. You shouldn't hit someone's face in a fight, but Wang Teng specialized in doing just that. It was a bit of a dirty hit. Furthermore, Hilson was just about to admit defeat. Even if he was still hesitating, he should have given him enough time to prepare himself. He had just started climbing his way up, yet Wang Ting stepped on him and walked all over him, not even giving him time to feel depressed. They are both geniuses. Can't he show him some respect? No matter what everyone else thought in their hearts, Wang Teng didn't hold back one bit as he smashed the brick down. Hilson was already dazed. He wanted to admit defeat, but he was stopped every time. Who could understand such despair? If he had known this earlier, he would have given up quickly. Why did he hesitate back then? Now, it was too late to regret. Visit Ria Me for extra chapters. Bang, bang, bang. The dull sound echoed all over the Colosseum, and everyone's eyes kept twitching. The high priest wanted to stop it, but he knew he couldn't. Otherwise, it would be unfair. He was complaining to himself, asking why Hilson had to hesitate and invite trouble. Helpless, he shook his head and sighed. When encountering a despicable man like Wang Teng, Hilson deserved to suffer. In the end, Wang Ting still had a trace of kindness in him. After feeling that it was about time, he suddenly increased his strength, getting ready to end the match. Boom! Hilson's body slammed onto the ground with a loud bang and slumped like a tattered sack, throwing up a cloud of dust. It finally ended. Everyone was sweating for Hilson. The calamity has finally concluded. After a while, the smoke dissipated, revealing Hilson's brutally abused body. He raised his trembling arms and uttered with a hoarse voice, I admit defeat. Everyone, so tenacious. Now they knew. Once the opportunity presented itself, the first thing to do was to admit defeat. At this moment, everyone seemed to be able to truly appreciate Hilson's despair. Super_desperate. JPG Wang Ting from country Xia has won the battle. The high priest announced the results hurriedly. He feared that if he was a step too late, Wang Ting might continue bashing Hilson up. Wang Teng landed from above and pouted. These people made him seem like some kind of a violent madman. He was too lazy to continue fighting. Was there a need to be so nervous? Besides, was that his problem? Of course not. Everyone was fighting for their countries, and their positions were different. It was difficult to blame anyone. The world was fair. If you wanted to get something, you had to fork out something in return. When Hilson chose to use country Xia as his stepping stone, he had to think that country Xia would come for him to collect the debt. It was just that he encountered a two-faced guy like Wang Teng. If he had met Mu Zhigua, he wouldn't be in such a miserable state. Hilson heard the result given by the high priest and finally heaved a sigh of relief. Just then, Wang Teng walked in front of him and squatted down, staring straight at him. What are you doing? I've already admitted defeat. Hilson's face was bruised. When he saw Wang Teng's face, he was startled. Enduring all the pain in his body, he struggled to stay away from him. Wang Teng reflected on his actions. Did he go too far? Frightening this guy like this, would he leave a psychological scar on him? Wang Teng shook his head. He would be gentler next time so that people wouldn't suffer so badly. Remember, I'm a country Xia martial warrior. Wang Ting looked deeply into his eyes. When he finished speaking, he turned and walked out of the Colosseum. Country Xia martial warrior. Hilson looked at his back, and his eyes welled with tears of regret. Mother, I will never provoke anyone from country Shia again. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Tip: you can use left, right, A and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters. Chapter 597. Are you interested to be my boyfriend? Shocking news. Why is a martial warrior from country Snow weeping and tearing up during a competition? Is this the distortion of human nature, or is it the decline of morality? To find out what happened, please watch the next match. When Hilson was carried down, he was self-reflecting on two things. First, he shouldn't have challenged country Shia. What was he thinking when he chose to challenge a martial warrior from country Shia? He couldn't find an answer to that. Next, why didn't he admit defeat earlier when he knew that he would lose? He had the chance to admit defeat, but he didn't treasure it. He only regretted it after he suffered a brutal beating. If heaven gave him another chance, he would immediately shout the three words, "I admit defeat." Wang Ting went back to the spectators' stand, only to realize that everyone was keeping a distance from him and looking at him with disdain. His face turned black. Is this how you welcome a victorious hero? Seriously. Dan Taixian was furious. When you shouted that stupid incantation, our relationship ended. Phut. Wang Ting almost vomited blood. You're so heartless. Is it that stupid? I was just cheering for myself. Didn't you see how shocked the foreigners were? How can you do something big if you can't accept this small flaw? Wang Teng reprimanded everyone in a righteous tone as if they were the ones who were wrong and he was just the misunderstood hero. Look, he had raised the reputation of their nation in front of these foreigners. He allowed them to experience their culture and power. There was nothing wrong with it. No matter what you say, you can't hide your childish heart, Dan Taixian replied coldly. Wang Ting, he wouldn't accept this injustice. He snorted. An outstanding person like me will never be understood. Everyone looked at his confident expression and got astounded by his shamelessness once again. They were so amazed that no one refuted. The competition continued. The martial warriors from other nations came out and challenged other countries. However, they avoided country Xia once again. They couldn't afford to offend them. Chu Fei, Yang Bo, and the others felt helpless. They looked at Wang Ting indignantly. It was this fellow's fault. They didn't have a chance to step into the arena. Wang Ting, his fault? He was so furious that he just ignored them. If you want to fight, go down and challenge someone. Why are you looking at me? Wang Ting rolled his eyes. He was too lazy to care about them. He chose to focus on the match and counted the gains from his last duel. Spiritual Realm Spirit * 205 Spiritual Realm Enlightenment * 180 Ice Cocoon Physique * 120 Ice Force * 600 Ice Spear Conscious * 135 Ice Arrow Rain * 30 Wang Teng was overjoyed by this round of great harvest. This ice element sheep had given him bundles of wool. Looking at the 100+ points of Spiritual Realm Spirit and Enlightenment, Wang Ting suddenly felt a sense of achievement. He had worked hard and knocked all these gains out with his brick. He was touched by himself. It wasn't easy to get all these attributes. If Hilson knew what Wang Teng was thinking, he might cry until he fainted. This was inhumane. The 120 points of Ice Cocoon Physique allowed Wang Teng's Ice Element Physique to rise by a certain degree. Ice Cocoon Physique, 148 5000. He was still some distance away from the perfected stage, but with this Ice Element Physique, Wang Teng got more sensitive towards the Ice Force. This was good for his cultivation. He didn't need to be afraid of his Ice Force lagging behind others anymore. Wang Teng felt elated. The 600 points of Ice Force were important too. After the experience in the virtual reality world, his Ice Force had reached the 9-star soldier level. He gained more Ice Force attributes during the global exchange, so his Ice Force rose again. Ice Force, 53,29,000, 9-star, the rise in cultivation was the most obvious change. Besides that, he gained new battle techniques too. Ice Spear Conscious, 181,000, first level, Ice Arrow Rain, Sky Rank 2100, well versed, He didn't just gain the Ice Spear conscious, but he also reached the first level. This was another battle conscious added to his collection. Along with the Skyrank Ice Arrow Rain, Wang Ting's gains were huge. Wang Teng didn't have any attacking ice element skills, but he had filled up all the gaps now. He had ice element conscious and battle technique. In terms of ice force, he was no weaker than an ordinary Brigadier General stage martial warrior. Wang Ting felt emotional. Visit Ria Del. Me for extra chapters. Hilson was sincerely a good man. He fought so hard, but it was all for his benefit. What a good man he was. The next few matches weren't as interesting. The martial warriors from the different countries challenged each other. Some Brigadier General stage martial warriors acted and winners were created. Wang Ting didn't care if the matches were interesting or not. Either way, he could collect many attributes. It was a gain for him. Fire Force *80 Earth Force *130 Earth Fist Conscious *60 Origin of Life *2 Wood Force *90 Metal Force *205 Time passed. Very soon, an entire day had gone by. The High Priest announced the ending of the matches today. The event would continue tomorrow. Wang Teng and Dan Taixian headed down the mountain. They prepared to go back to their hotel to rest. Wait. A voice suddenly sounded behind them. Everyone turned back and saw a group of people chasing after them. It was Country Boar. What's the matter? Dan Taixian asked curiously. The leader of Country Boar, Darwin, smiled and said, "The talents from Country Shia have yielded brilliant results during the matches today. The young men and ladies from my country kept pestering me to introduce them to you all." Brilliant results. Dan Taixian's expression turned strange. Was he honestly referring to them? Moreover, during the Brigadier General stage duels, only Zhu Yushao and Wang Teng went out. Zhu Yushao lost while Wang Ting, there was no point mentioning him. How could Country Boar say that they had achieved brilliant results? Were they being sarcastic? Darwin and the others didn't know what Dan Taixian was thinking. They smiled and chatted with them as if they were here to make friends. While the leaders were chatting, a tall and muscular young lady with an exquisite face walked out from behind Darwin and raised her hand directly in front of Wang Teng. "Hello, nice to meet you. I'm Valeria Matusevich." Wang Teng looked at the lady in front of him and suddenly felt a sense of pressure. King Kong Barbie. For some reason, when he saw her gaze, a bad feeling floated into his heart. "Hello, I'm Wang Teng." Wang Teng tried his best to maintain his indifference. He nodded and returned her greeting. "I think that you're very powerful. Are you interested in being my boyfriend?" Valeria was extremely straightforward. Fart. Wang Ting almost fainted. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Tip: you can use left, right, A and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters. Chapter 598, Boss, please let me go. Slurp. Wang Ting swallowed his saliva with difficulty. He raised his head and looked at this beauty from Country Boar. Even though he was taller than 1.8 meters, he needed to raise his head to look at the lady's face. If not, all he could see was her large chest. This lady looked astonishing at first glance. When he took a second look, he felt that she was a ghost. She was beautiful but unbelievably muscular. When he heard her words, Wang Ting finally knew where his bad feeling came from earlier. This King Kong Barbie in front of him was his greatest misfortune. Not only was Wang Ting shocked, but his companions also had their mouths wide open. A few moments later, they started trying their best to suppress their laughter. Zhu Yushao, Chu Fei, and the others even turned red in the face. They couldn't control themselves. Wang Ting felt like cursing when he saw their expressions. His expression kept changing. Is this question difficult to answer? Valeria stared at Wang Ting and asked seriously. Wang Ting coughed awkwardly. Difficult. It wasn't just difficult. It was the most difficult question of the century. It's not difficult to answer. Wang Ting refused to show any signs of weakness. But when he saw the pure gaze of the young lady, he didn't know what to do. This King Kong Barbie seemed like a naive girl. He swallowed the words at the tip of his tongue and sighed in his heart. In the end, he changed his speech and asked, "Are the people in your country all this straightforward?" "I like to be direct," Valeria replied. "How about this? Before I answer your question, let me ask you one first." Wang Teng pretended to ponder before he spoke. "All right, go ahead." Valeria nodded. The others looked over with interest when they heard their conversation. Dan Taixian glanced at Wang Teng ambiguously. She seemed happy at his plight. "Well, you wanted to show off. This is what you deserve. Do you prefer sweet bean curd or salty bean curd?" A glint appeared in Wang Teng's eyes. Everyone collapsed in shock. They finally understood what he wanted to do. This fellow was despicable. He was using this method to avoid her. What? Valeria was stunned. She didn't know what bean curd was. She had never heard of it. Wang Teng finally realized how stupid he was. However, he didn't know any food from country boar, so he asked again, "What do you like to eat in your country?" "Thin pancakes," Valeria replied without any hesitation. She even swallowed her saliva as she recalled the delicious taste of the food. Wang Teng, this lady was a foodie. Suddenly, Wang Teng had another bad premonition. However, he had already asked his question, so he had to follow through. He continued, "Do you like sweet pancakes or salty pancakes?" Everyone looked at him in contempt. How could he ask this shameless question? He was just making use of her naiveness. Wang Teng ignored them and stared intently at Valeria. "This is a piece of cake. Once you make your decision, our fate will end." Valeria looked at him curiously. She didn't know why he asked this question, but she still replied to him, "Both." "You like both?" Wang Teng was stunned. "Yes, I like both," Valeria nodded and said. "How can you like both?" Wang Teng had a breakdown. The script wasn't right. This was a choice question. Why was she choosing both? Didn't she know that this was ridiculous? Ha ha ha, everyone burst out laughing when they saw Wang Teng's frustrated expression. "Have a good chat with Miss Valeria. We can improve the relationship between our countries. Isn't this what you like to do?" Dan Taixian patted Wang Teng's shoulder and laughed. Wang Teng got depressed. "What's wrong with these people? Can we still be friends? Y'all are pushing me into the fire. Is this how we improve the relationship between our countries? Don't say anything. Our friendship ends here." Wang Teng glared at Dan Taixian before he turned and said to Valeria seriously, "We have no fate if you like to eat thin pancakes." "Why?" Valeria asked. "I don't like pancakes." "There's no future for two people with different tastes," Wang Teng replied. "You misunderstood me." Valeria laughed uncontrollably. "I like to eat everything, so we won't have the problem of having different tastes for food. Visit Riadel. Me for extra chapters." Wang Teng squinted. Damn it, he had met his opponent. This naive-looking King Kong Barbie was so hard to handle. This was out of his expectations. Let's not talk about food. Let's talk about different things. If two people want to get together, they must understand each other. Wang Teng winked at Dan Taixian furiously as he walked down the mountain. "Let's walk and talk." Dan Taixian pretended she didn't see anything. However, she still walked down the mountain. It was indeed embarrassing to talk about this in the middle of the mountain path. "What do you want to understand about me?" Valeria caught up with Wang Teng and asked. "For instance, your interest and hobbies," Wang Teng said. "I like to hit people," Valeria replied. Wang Teng was speechless. Is that a hobby? This King Kong Barbie's hobby was quite special. But for some reason, he felt as if he had met his soulmate. Phut, to hell with the soulmate. This wasn't the result he wanted. Cough, hitting people is not good. I don't like to hit them. Look, our interests are different. We have no future, Wang Teng said insincerely. The moment he finished speaking, everyone stared at him with a strange expression. Do you believe yourself when you say that you don't like to hit people? Dan Taixian wasn't afraid of creating a scene, exposing Wang Teng instantly. Our Valeria decided to look for you after seeing your performance during the match. Darwin, who had been keeping quiet, finally opened his mouth. Wang Teng finally knew where the problem was. F***K, this King Kong Barbie fell for him when he was hitting someone. How could he change? Was this fatal attraction? No. 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 Frightening images started appearing in his mind. He shuddered, and his head turned numb. He shook his head frantically. I think that you misunderstood me. I don't like to hit people, honestly. I'm a kind person deep down. I was forced to hit him during the match. Normally, I won't hit anyone if I don't have to, Wang Teng said seriously. What a coincidence. I'm a kind person too, Valeria replied shyly. That's right, our Valeria will feel guilty even if she killed an ant. She's a kind and good lady. Darwin nodded and spoke up for Valeria. Wang Teng felt stuffy in his chest, his eyes filled with disbelief. How could these people be so shameless? Wang Teng didn't know what to do anymore. Despair, boss, please let me go. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Tip: you can use left, right, A and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters. Chapter 599, The Surprise Appearance of Constellation Force. The people from Country Boar didn't leave, especially after Dan Taixuan's enthusiasm. She urged them to stay and have dinner with them. They had another friendly round of conversation. The two nations had a good relationship, at least on the surface, so the dinner was harmonious. Nothing unsightly happened. On the dining table, Darwin asked, "What do you think of the White Eagle Nation's Gene Martial warriors?" Everyone from Country Shia paused. "What do you think?" Dan Taixuan threw the question back at him. Darwin didn't mind, though. If he wanted to know Country Shia's opinion, he needed to show some sincerity. He smiled and replied, "Although there are some benefits, the flaws are also apparent. After they mutate, they will get influenced by the beast's consciousness. This will harm themselves and their opponents. After they get affected by the beast's consciousness, they will get stronger," Dan Taixuan said. "But without their consciousness guiding the mutation, their attacks become aimless, and they are no different from wild beasts. It's not hard to deal with them," Wang Teng interrupted. "I forgot that you fought with them." Darwin looked at Wang Teng intently. If it was honestly as simple as what he said, they wouldn't need to be scared of the White Eagle Nation's Gene Martial warriors. Although Wang Teng could defeat them easily, it didn't mean other martial warriors could. "Your country is studying gene mutation too, right?" Dan Taixuan suddenly asked in a meaningful tone. Darwin's gaze froze. Then, he smiled and said, "Why are you talking about us? Aren't you doing it too?" The atmosphere on the dining table tensed up. Almost immediately after that, Darwin and Dan Taixuan laughed out loud. They dropped the topic as if it had never been brought up. The atmosphere turned harmonious again. "I will not give up," Valeria said to Wang Teng earnestly before she left. Wang Teng had a headache. This stubborn person was fixed on getting him. Dan Taixuan grabbed his shoulder and sniggered. "Not bad, little brother. You are so fortunate. We are only halfway through the event, but you've already gotten a beauty. What an honor you have brought to our country. Go away. You call this fortunate? Bringing honor to the country?" Wang Teng pushed her hand away furiously. He walked up the stairs and ignored her. Everyone laughed behind him. Zhu Yushao teased, "Of course you're lucky. Miss Valeria has an angelic face. I've never seen such an exquisite face in my life. An angelic face but a devilish body. I'm afraid that my small body can't handle her," Wang Teng said in frustration. "That's why you need to invest first. Figures can change. As long as she doesn't exercise her muscles in the future, her figure will return to normal. It will be a great investment for you at that time. You have nothing to lose and everything to gain," Zhu Yushao analyzed. "Haha, I don't have the time to play this cultivation game." Wang Teng scoffed. "You don't understand how lucky you are. You will regret it in the future." Dan Taixuan nudged him. "Go away." Wang Teng was exasperated and indignant. The next day, everyone gathered at the Colosseum again. The moment Country Boar saw the people from Country Shia, Valeria shouted and waved at them as if they had a close relationship. Wang Tung forced himself to nod his head as a reply. When the martial warriors from the other nations saw this, they wondered if Country Boar and Country Shia had joined hands. The high priest came down from the peak and noticed this scene. His eyes shimmered. As the largest martial warrior organization in this continent, the Holy Temple paid close attention to all the big nations in the world. Were Country Boar and Country Shia sending some signals? Both Country Boar and Country Shia would never expect the entire world to think too much about two youngsters' actions. What on earth was going on in their minds? The duels continue. Who's willing to be the first? The high priest asked. The Colosseum turned quiet. Suddenly, in Country Inca's direction, a young monk walked out and entered the arena. He was wearing a red gown, with the top half of his body naked. He wasn't bald. A short layer of hair had grown on his head. His expression was solemn and calm. He turned to Country Shia and placed his palms together. I will like to challenge Country Shia. Please. The Colosseum became silent again. Chu Fei and the others turned serious. They looked at each other. Who wants to go? Dan Taishen asked. This is probably the most powerful martial warrior from Country Inca, Wang Ting said in surprise. He glanced at the martial warrior. The most powerful martial warrior. Everyone was dumbfounded. That's right. He has reached the low-tier general stage, and there's a strange aura around him. Wang Tung frowned. Low-tier general stage. Visit Ria Del. Me for extra chapters. Chu Fei and Yang Bo immediately gave up the thought of going out. They were only at the brigadier general stage. Agliro was the strongest trump card of Country Inca. They had no chance of winning if they went up to accept his challenge. All in all, none of the exceptionally talented martial warriors should be looked down upon. In that case, let me do it, Mu Jigua stood up and said. Wang Teng and Dan Taishen looked at each other and nodded. Be careful. Mu Jigua nodded at them and entered the arena. Country Shia, Mu Jigua. Mu Jigua bowed at Agliro. Please. Agliro returned the bow calmly. The instant they finished speaking, two powerful auras rose abruptly in the arena. Both sides had started their battle. This was a battle between low-tier general stage martial warriors, so all the nations paid high attention to this match. They looked down sternly. Wang Tung turned serious too. Despite chewing a barbecued octopus leg, his gaze was focused on the arena. Boom. The next moment, two forces exploded. Mu Jigua was bathed in golden force. With a battle blade in his hand, he slashed out a ray of blade glow, aiming it at the Country Inca martial warrior opposite him. Agliro's weapon was a strange metal rod. His expression was calm as dark red force glows appeared around his body. Scorching heat burned his surroundings. This is... Wang Tung's gaze froze. Waves of astonishment crashed into his heart. Constellation force. There was no mistake. The force this monk was using was constellation force. Although this constellation force felt like a mixture and wasn't as pure as the true constellation force, it was still this force. The leader of martial arts in their country had searched high and low for this force, but he couldn't get it. How could Wang Tung not be flabbergasted? Is it an ancient skill from Country Inca? Wang Tung's gaze flickered. He remembered what Dan Taishen once told him. Country Inca had a long history of martial arts. They seemed to have some secret scriptures that outsiders didn't know. Was this related to the appearance of constellation force? If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Tip: you can use left, right, A and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters. Chapter 600, I Can't Lose. Wang Ting suddenly had high expectations for the duel. Constellation force. He wondered if this martial warrior from Country Inca was able to drop some different attribute bubbles. Fortunately, he knew that there would definitely be constellation force. While he was wondering about the potential gains, Mu Jigua and Agliro had started fighting in the arena below. Their bodies collided. They represented their countries and their honor. It was a direct match with no nonsense. Boom. The blade glow by Mu Jigua lashed down on Agliro's head. Agliro's gaze didn't change. With a wave of his hand, a ray of red light flashed in front, shattering the blade glow immediately. At the same time, Mujigwa had already arrived in front of Agliro. He punched his fist at him. Bang! When they exchanged punches, red and golden light emitted out from them, bringing along a powerful force with it. It swept through the arena. Then in a split second, they separated. Mujigwa and Agliro retreated a few meters back and stared at each other sternly. Mujigwa lowered his eyelids slightly. He could still feel the remnants of the scorching heat on his fists. Even the force in his body seemed to be burning. This fire force was stronger than a normal martial warrior's. It looked like Wang Teng was right. Agliro was different. It would be hard to deal with him. Boom. Agliro didn't give him too much time to think. He tapped his feet on the ground and charged towards Mujigwa like a ray of red light. Crack. At the same time, cracks appeared on the ground where he was standing at. This was the power of a tap of his feet. Mujigwa turned serious. He rose into the air and dived down, slashing his blade at Agliro below him. Clang! The clash of metals resounded in the sky. Agliro stood on the ground, his knees slightly bent. However, he had managed to block Mujigwa's attack forcefully with his bare hands. Noticing that his attack had failed, Mujigwa soared into the sky again. Agliro followed behind him closely. They turned into two balls of light as they crashed into each other intensely in the sky. Force explosions echoed continuously in the Colosseum while the residual force in the sky swept to the ground. The power was frightening. These two martial warriors are very strong, Gerald from the Large Eagle Nation said slowly. A fighting spirit was burning in his eyes. Both of them have reached the low-tier general stage. They must be the strongest martial warrior from their country. Arnold hesitated for a moment before he continued, however, I'm very curious of Wang Teng's identity. I feel that he's not as simple as he seems. Is it possible that Mujigwa isn't the strongest martial warrior? It might be another person, Gerald said with twinkling eyes. Are you saying, it's Wang Teng? Arnold pondered for a few seconds. Then, he shook his head. But he's too young. I'm already shocked that he could defeat Hilson. It will be hard to believe that he's on par with people like you. You're not the only one. I don't dare to believe it either, Gerald said. On the White Eagle Nation's side, Yoke said to a young man, Shuan, can you defeat them? Marsha and Fortes looked at the young man involuntarily. After a night of rest, Fortes had regained consciousness. They used a large number of expensive healing medicine to treat the injuries on his body. Only his face remained a little swollen. They couldn't erase the wounds completely. Fortes would become furious whenever he remembered how his handsome face was beaten up so badly. When he heard that the talent chosen by the Holy Temple had received the same treatment, he heaved a sigh of relief. At least he wasn't the only one. It was better to get embarrassed together. However, the other martial warrior from the White Eagle Nation wasn't as lucky. Kyun was still unconscious after the stimulation from Shunai Tongji's illusion. It would be hard for him to resume his human form. Yoke flew him back overnight for emergency treatment. He might be able to save his life. The young man whom Yoke was talking to looked extremely ordinary. His nose bridge was high, and there were 2 white lines on his face. Hearing Yoke's question, he replied coldly, I don't know. Yoke felt helpless. He had nowhere to vent his frustration, so he stopped talking to the young man. Marsha and Fortes were afraid of this young man too. They didn't chat with him when they noticed he didn't want to speak. This young man's status seemed a little special among the team. The martial warriors from the other nations were watching the match attentively as they measured their distance from the 2 contestants on the stage. Visit Ria Del. Me for extra chapters. Boom, boom, boom. In the sky above the Colosseum, 2 balls of lights collided fervently. However, one of them was at a disadvantage. When Mujigwa crashed into Agliro once again, he flew backward uncontrollably. He swung his blade beside him and stepped in mid-air, making use of the resistance in the air to force himself to stop. Blood dripped down the corners of his lips. He stared grimly at Agliro, who was a distance away. Suddenly, his vision blurred. Memories flashed through his mind. In his flashback, there was a group of 4 people going on a mission. Mu Jigua was one of them. They shuttled through a forest quickly, helping one another along the way as they rushed in a certain direction. The image changed. They arrived at a relic site and got in a fight with other martial warriors. They seemed to be fighting over something. Suddenly, 2 of them landed in danger. Mu Jigua gave up the mission target he was fighting for and reinforced them. In the end, he came back with his heavily injured teammates. A middle-aged man in military uniform stood in front of him with a look of disappointment. He sighed and left. The flashback ended with that sigh. These thoughts only occurred for a split second. Mu Jigua quickly regained his senses, and his gaze turned resolute. I can't lose. He clutched the battle blade in his hand tightly. His competitiveness was flaming. Golden force shot through the clouds as a sharp bad conscience spun around him. Rays of golden blade glows danced crazily in the air, intertwining with one another before finally gathering into a large golden blade. Mu Jigua widened his eyes and held his battle blade with both hands. He swung it down in extreme anger. The golden ray cut through the sky, pressing the air around it and forming shrill sounds of abrasion and loud explosions. Sharp blade conscience swept the sky. It was glaring to the eye. Slash, slash, slash. Angry howls seemed to echo in the air, followed by the slash of the blade conscious. Agliro raised his head. With his gaze still calm, he placed his palms together and the flames around him grew bigger. They turned into a divine-looking giant flame beast. The giant beast roared fiercely and charged towards the golden blade glow above its head. Boom! The 2 forces collided, releasing an earth-shattering explosion. Red and golden lights lit up half the sky, concealing the situation with its blinding glow. No one could see who won or lost. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Tip: you can use left, right, A and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters. Chapter 601. Imdam Outstanding. Sigh. Wang Ting suddenly sighted. He already knew who would win without watching the match. Agliro was powerful. With the Constellation Force, he was invincible among his peers. He could even jump stages and defeat someone with a higher cultivation realm than him. Well, unless his battle ability was too weak. But country Inca wouldn't allow such a martial warrior to embarrass their country. Hence, Mu Jigua would definitely lose. Dan Taixian and the others felt their hearts dropping when they heard Wang Teng's sigh. He wouldn't make this reaction for nothing. Right then, the light and dust in the Colosseum finally dispersed. Everyone looked over hurriedly. Mu Jigua was half kneeling in the arena, and he was in a miserable state. His entire body was slightly burnt. Agliro was floating in mid-air with his palms together. There were no expressions on his face. Fat. Mu Jigua looked up at Agliro and vomited a mouthful of fresh blood. He pulled himself up with difficulty and stumbled. He only managed to stabilize his body by stabbing his blade on the ground. Admit defeat, Wang Ting stood up and said. Mu Jigua gritted his teeth, his gaze stubborn. As the leader, my decision is final. We admit defeat. Wang Ting walked into the arena and spoke in a calm tone. The high priest looked at him in astonishment. He nodded and said, Country Inca wins. Unwillingness flashed past Mu Jiguo's eyes. Don't worry. You only lost 1 match. Leave the rest to me. Wang Teng looked at Agliro intently. Then, he lifted Mu Jigua up and brought him down the arena. The other martial warriors came forward to console Mu Jigua after seeing his expression. Senior, the words got stuck in Luo Cheng's throat. He didn't know what to say. He might be the only one that understood Mu Jiguo's current emotions. Fine. You don't have to do this, Mu Jigua shook his head and said. All right, we just lost a match. Do you all have to be so solemn? You look as if you have lost a teammate. Don't worry, we can win it back next time, Wang Ting said nonchalantly. Everyone knew that he was comforting them, but they still rolled their eyes uncontrollably. His tone was so irritating. Why couldn't he say something positive? What did he mean by losing a teammate? Was he cursing them? TSK, how ungrateful. Wang Ting shook his head and sat down. He took out his snacks and munched on them indifferently. For a moment, the only noise left was the sound of him chewing. Everyone felt their eyebrows jumping. They wished that they could press him on the ground and beat him up. How infuriating. While they were worried about the match, he was eating his food heartlessly. Ignoring them, Wang Ting counted his gains silently. Fire Force * 680 Constellation Force, Fire, * 65 Metal Force * 750 Metal Blade Conscious * 350 Metal Blade Conscious * 290. Wang Ting was overjoyed. As expected, the guy dropped the Constellation Force. Moreover, it belonged to the fire element, which he possessed. Constellation Force, Fire 87. Wang Ting had picked up 22 points of the fire element Constellation Force in the underground laboratory in capital Xia. Adding the 65 points now, he had 87 points in total. He felt that he had more fire element Constellation Force to use. Unfortunately, he hadn't found a scripture to convert his normal force to Constellation Force. If he could convert all his forces into Constellation Forces, his ability would rise exponentially. As for the ancient god's body, it was useless. The scripture was no doubt amazing, but it could only strengthen his physical body. It couldn't help in cultivating his forces. It was hopeless to search for inspiration from the ancient god's body. Besides the Constellation Force, he also gained normal forces. Wang Ting looked at the 680 points of fire force in deep thought. Obviously, Agliro hadn't grasped the usage of the Constellation Force entirely. Only part of the force in his body was the Constellation Force, with the rest being ordinary fire force. Next, he glanced at the 750 points of metal force. The attribute bubbles dropped by a low-tier General Stage Martial Warrior were higher in value compared to the ones dropped by Brigadier General Stage Martial Warriors. Finally, there was the Metal Blade Conscious. The Blade Conscious Mu Jigua had executed during the match was impressive. Although he lost to Agliro, it wasn't because of his stage and ability. He lost due to the difference in the quality of the force. Metal Blade Conscious was still a powerful conscious. Metal Blade Conscious, 345,000, 5th level, visit Riadel. Me for extra chapters. Wang Ting already possessed Metal Blade Conscious and was at the 4th level. With another 640 points, he successfully reached the 5th level. The stronger his Blade Conscious was, the more advantage it would bring to Wang Ting. The more sword and blade conscious he instilled into his sword blade firestorm, the stronger it would be. Thinking about it carefully, Wang Ting started to admire himself. How could he create such a powerful battle technique so easily and casually? Sigh, damn outstanding. Wang Ting suddenly realized that whether it was blade conscious, sword conscious, or fist conscious, he was merging them unconsciously. Even his force too. Was this his path? Wang Ting touched his chin in deep thought. He felt that he had discovered something remarkable. Anyway, picking up attributes without doing anything felt amazing. After Country Inca and Country Shia's match, the martial warriors from the other nations got restless. Gerald from the Large Eagle Nation suddenly stood up and stretched his back. He said to Arnold, "My bones are itching from watching the duels. Let me play with the White Eagle Nation." "Don't be careless," Arnold reminded him. I know. Gerald waved his hand and walked into the Colosseum. Everyone got interested when they saw the Large Eagle Nation participating. Gerald scanned the surroundings and stopped in the White Eagle Nation's direction. He opened his mouth slowly. "Large Eagle Nation, Gerald. I will like to challenge." "White Eagle Nation, why is everyone challenging us?" Yoke's face turned black. He was exasperated. "But, Large Eagle Nation, how predictable." Yoke sneered. He turned to the young man behind him. "Shuan, it's your turn." Shuan glanced at Gerald. He stood up and walked straight into the arena. The White Eagle Nation is sending an unfamiliar face. I've never seen him fight before. Is this the trump card they have been hiding? The Large Eagle Nation might have sent their most powerful martial warrior too. I can sense that this man's aura is at the low-tier general stage. The martial warriors from the different nations chatted softly. They were highly anticipating this match. Shuan. At this moment, Shuan had arrived in front of Gerald. He spoke in an indifferent tone. A white knight sword appeared in Gerald's hand. He pointed it at the ground as he looked straight at his opponent. His presence rose immediately. Shuan's expression changed slightly as an invisible aura exploded from his body. Boom! These two auras collided in the air. The atmosphere tensed up in an instant. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Tip: you can use left, right, A and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters. Chapter 602, Let Surprises Rain on Me. The battle of aura between formidable warriors wasn't just about winning. They might seem to be competing with each other, but they were actually looking for a chance to attack. The person who revealed a loophole during this battle would give his opponent an opportunity to welcome him with a round of ferocious attacks. At their stage, every mistake was fatal. The ability of low-tier general stage martial warriors was at the peak of the pyramid on Earth. Every single attack from them was life-threatening. They mustn't be underestimated. The Colosseum was silent. No one attacked first. They were both staring at each other with their daggers drawn. This was the calmness before an imminent storm. The spectators held their breaths and stared at the two people below without blinking. Wang Ting touched his chin and clicked his tongue. Look at the intense gaze they're giving each other. People might wonder how long they are going to continue looking at each other. Everyone. The people around him were watching the match seriously, but when they heard his words, their stern expressions collapsed. Intense gaze. They were having a decent and normal battle, yet Wang Ting managed to make the atmosphere awkward. What weird things were going through this bastard's mind? However, after Wang Ting said it, they felt that there was honestly something going on between Gerald and Shuan. Don't you think so too? Wang Ting's eyes lit up when he saw their expressions. The expressions of other martial warriors immediately changed. The thought had only flashed through their minds for a split second, but Wang Ting still noticed it. Did this fellow have eyes as sharp as an eagle? But it was his fault. If he didn't mention it, they wouldn't think in that direction. They were all pure and naive people. They wouldn't have such indecent thoughts. Hence, it was Wang Ting's fault. Wang Ting took all the blame. Shut up. Dan Taixian shouted. She turned angry from embarrassment. Wang Ting felt a strong sense of contempt in her voice. He pouted and muttered, "What is this? Women are so strange. Do you dare to say that again?" Dan Taixian had sharp ears. She glared at Wang Ting as she snorted. Zhu Yushao, Ji Xiuming, and the others gloated at him. What a bold young man who dared to say everything. If you have problems with this website, please continue reading your novel on our new website myboxnovel.com. Thanks. Didn't he know that women were narrow-minded? Why won't I dare to do it? Who's afraid of you? Wang Ting glared at her and said in a righteous tone, "What did I say just now?" "Oh right, I said that you are as beautiful as the goddess in the sky and your beauty is unparalleled in this universe. You are an exceptionally outstanding lady." Fat. Ren Qingtsang spat out the mouth of water he had just drunk. This was the most shameless person he had ever seen. Ren Qingtsang suddenly understood why he had lost against him. He also knew why Wang Ting was so powerful and miles ahead of his peers. It was because he was shameless. Their ancestors were right to say that a person with no ego was invincible. Ji Xiuming and the others were bewildered and stared at Wang Ting with strange gazes. Suddenly, they felt a sense of respect towards him. They would never be able to learn the skill of throwing away their ego whenever they needed to. Luo Cheng even gave him a thumbs up secretly at the side. Impressive. Dan Taixian gave him an ambiguous smile. She knew that this brat was talking nonsense, but she still felt happy. You're sensible. Dan Taixian glanced at him and sat down lazily. Boom. At this moment, a loud explosion occurred in the arena. Gerald and Shuan had started fighting. They collided violently with each other in the sky. In an instant, the roar of thunder and the shrill cry of a gale inundated the arena. Lightning force. Wind force. Wang Teng suddenly smiled with his eyes. Happiness filled up his heart. These two martial warriors were lightning element and wind element martial warriors. Good riddance, as expected of the talents of the two big countries. Mutated element martial warriors were rare. Ever since Wang Teng became a martial warrior, he had only met a few mutated element martial warriors. However, in this global exchange event, he saw an ice element martial warrior, a divine spirit master, and now, lightning element and wind element martial warriors. Let surprises rain on me. Wang Teng felt like shouting to the sky. In the sky, Gerald seemed to have turned into a flash of green light. His body was light and agile like a spirit in the wind. It was hard to capture his position. But whenever he attacked, he turned into an extremely sharp green light blade, flying through the sky and splitting it, creating clear marks in the air. Xuan from the White Eagle Nation was powerful too. Bathed in bolts of lightning, he shuttled through the sky with a lightning long pike in his hand. They were engaged in an intense fight. Silver lightning sparks flew everywhere whenever they collided, along with the strong gale. With them in the center, the area around them became a battlefield soaked in violent forces. The commotion caused by their duel was astonishing, leaving the other martial warriors flabbergasted. But they continued looking at the sky, unwilling to miss any details. They are so powerful, Zhao Yuanwu muttered. He was astounded by the scene and couldn't control himself. Luo Cheng, Ji Xiuming, and the other martial warriors were shocked too. They realized that there was a huge gap between them and these real top-tier talents. However, they were still young. In the next global exchange event, they might be able to reach that height. They could be even stronger. I didn't expect both talents from the Large Eagle Nation and the White Eagle Nation to be mutated element martial warriors, Mu Zhigua said grimly. They have reached a profound stage in their respective elements. They are very powerful, Dan Taixian said, her gaze flickering. Ren Qingtsang blinked and clenched his fist in frustration. He was also a lightning element martial warrior, but he was far weaker than Xuan. The other party might just defeat him with a single hand. If it was Wang Teng, what would happen? He glanced at the young man, only to realize that he was watching the fight between those two martial warriors with excitement and happiness. What the hell? What was with that happy look? Why are you happy when they are so powerful? Even with Ren Qingkang's strong mindset, he couldn't help but lament. Honestly, he couldn't grasp Wang Teng's thoughts. This fellow was unique. He would never imagine that Wang Teng was elated because Gerald and Xuan kept dropping attribute bubbles during their fight. Green and purple bubbles fell from the sky one by one and floated on the ground of the Colosseum. Another harvest. Lightning force * 50 lightning force * 30 wind force * 45 wind force * 25 wind soul conscious * 10. Chapter 603, Lei Tang Battle Conscious. Wind Soul Conscious. Wang Teng was stunned. Then, the happiness in his eyes grew more evident. He thought that gaining the wind and lightning force was good enough since he was an easily satisfied child. He didn't expect his sheeps to give him more surprises. They dropped a wind element conscious attribute. As the wind soul conscious merged into his body, the related memories appeared in Wang Teng's mind. There was a sea with wind that raged the surface of the sea, creating fierce and frightening waves. A figure stood roaming in the violent storm, floating left and right like rootless grass. It seemed as if he would be torn apart by the gale and swallowed by the waves at any moment. Yet every time he fell into the sea, he would fly out again, charging forward amidst the rain and storm and fighting for enlightenment in such an adverse situation. From stumbling and falling at the start to getting used to the storm and welcoming it like a sea swallow, it gradually became light and nimble. Once the image stopped moving, Wang Teng felt enlightened. After fully absorbing the attribute bubble, a green glow appeared in his eyes uncontrollably. A breeze caressed his body, lifting everyone's hair up. Hair! Dan Taixian and the others were martial warriors, so they immediately noticed the difference. Following the source of the movement, they turned to look at Wang Teng. They saw the glimmer that was disappearing gradually in his eyes, and it left them stunned. Did you achieve enlightenment again? Dan Taixian asked with uncertainty. A little. Wang Ting waved his hands as he tried to push their attention away. Everyone was speechless. A little. If they weren't close to him and felt that strange breeze just now, they would have believed him. However, their attention was on the match, so they didn't probe further. They shifted their gazes back to the sky. Wang Ting heaved a sigh of relief. He would have a tough time explaining it to them if they asked. He had picked up 130 points of lightning force and 115 points of wind force a moment ago. He was now sensing the two forces in his body. He nodded in satisfaction before looking into the arena again. As the duel grew more and more intense, more and more attribute bubbles were dropped. Wang Ting turned into a hard-working farmer, swinging his rack and digging up the fruits of other people's labor. It was nervous and exciting. If you have problems with this website, please continue reading your novel on our new website myboxnovel.com. Thanks. They are too fast. I can't see them clearly, Zhu Yuxiao suddenly said. There was perspiration on her forehead. Chu Fei and Yang Bo seemed to find it strenuous too. Unable to keep up with their speed, they felt helpless. Gerald is at the losing end, Wang Ting said calmly. What? Everyone was surprised. Based on their observation, the two people in the arena were equally matched. Why was Gerald at the losing end? Gerald is good at speed. His attacks are not weak, but that depends on his opponent. Xuan is a lightning element martial warrior. In front of his lightning attacking skills, Gerald's attacks will be destroyed soon, Wang Ting analyzed. Zhu Yuxiao and the others understood. They thought about it carefully and realized that Gerald didn't gain an upper hand when his attacks collided with Xuan's lightning power. They were destroyed every time. Wang Ting was right. Gerald used his exceptional speed to fight with Xuan, so it gave people an illusion that he was of equal strength. Of course, Xuan wasn't slow either. But compared to Gerald, who had the wind soul conscious, he was a little slower. This fellow, they looked at Wang Ting with respect. When they were still struggling on the surface, Wang Ting had already looked past it and saw the essence. Not everyone had such sharp eyesight. They didn't know that Wang Ting's battle awareness had already reached the 9-star level. Adding in his experience, he could tell many things at a single glance. Boom! Suddenly, changes occurred to the battle in the arena. A figure fell from the sky, its body covered with a thick green glow. A purple lightning bolt struck down on the body without any mercy. The two lights were like two shooting stars moving at extremely high speed. Boom! The purple bolt of lightning caught up with the green ball of light in front. It stabbed right into the ball of light like a lightning spear. Arnold stood up abruptly with a grim expression. He clenched his fists tightly and stared intently at the two lights in the arena. Boom! The ball of light smashed onto the ground, throwing dust into the air. Cracks spread out on the ground. If even the sturdy ground of the Colosseum was not let off, you could tell how powerful that attack was. The martial warriors from the other countries held their breaths as they looked in the arena. They waited for the final result. After some time, the dust dissipated, and the arena was cleared. Gerald was lying on the ground with a shallow hole below him. The cracks spread out like spiderwebs. Xuan stood in front of him with his battle spear. His face was calm. The sharp tip of the spear was pointed at Gerald's neck, sparks of electricity flashing on it. I lost. Cough. Gerald moved his lips with difficulty. While speaking, he suddenly coughed violently before vomiting a mouthful of blood. Xuan kept his long spear after Gerald admitted defeat. He walked towards the spectators' stand. The high priest announced the results. Everyone sighed. To them, Gerald was already very powerful, but he still lost to Xuan. Wang Ting glanced at Xuan's back intently. Then, he picked up the attribute bubbles scattered on the ground. Lightning Force *150 Lightning Force *240 Lightning Force *330 Latang Battle Conscious *120 Spiritual Realm Spirit *205 Spiritual Realm Enlightenment *180 Wind Force *510 Wind Force *420 Wind Soul Conscious * 275 Spiritual Realm Spirit * 136 Spiritual Realm Enlightenment * 170 Divine Wind Scripture * 65 Wang Teng was amazed. Oh my God! What a huge number of attribute bubbles! He had received 720 points of lightning force and 930 points of wind force. This was a huge gain considering he didn't kill these two people. Then, there were 341 points of Spiritual Realm Spirit and 350 points of Spiritual Realm Enlightenment. Unfortunately, most of these talents had Spiritual Realm Spirit and Enlightenment. These were nothing to Wang Teng. Then, there were 275 points of Wind Soul Conscious. Adding it to the 10 points he gained before, he had 285 points now. Wind Soul Conscious, 285 1000, first level. What surprised him was, besides Wind Soul Conscious, he also gained another conscious attribute, Leitang Battle Conscious. As these attribute bubbles merged into his body, a figure appeared in Wang Teng's mind. The figure was fighting with the bolts of lightning in the sky, lonely yet powerful. It slowly gathered a frightening battle conscious. The image came to an end as the figure stabbed his spear into the sky, clashing with a bolt of lightning. Boom! Amidst the explosion, the figure stood there without moving. The bolts of lightning around him made him appear magnificent and eye-catching. Leitang Battle Conscious, Wang Teng muttered to himself. A sharp glint appeared in his eyes. Chapter 604, The Weirdo and the Tough Nut. What did you just say? Dan Taixian asked curiously. She didn't hear the words Leitang Battle Conscious when Wang Teng was whispering to himself. Nothing, Wang Teng smiled and replied. Dan Taixian shook her head and didn't probe further. She then turned and looked at the Colosseum. Frankly speaking, Gerald was not weak. On the contrary, he was very strong and was considered to be amongst the top ranks of martial warriors from all around the world. But when two forces clash against one another, one would eventually lose. In the battle between him and Xuan, Xuan was the final victor. His lightning stance had left a deep impression on many people. In the eyes of everyone, the White Eagle Nation was keeping their cards hidden. The ordinary-looking Xuan had never made a move before. But when he did, he displayed a strength worthy of an ace talent, defeating Gerald and clinching the victory. It was clear that Xuan was the White Eagle Nation's trump card. At this moment, Xuan returned to the spectators' stand and everyone from the White Eagle Nation gathered around him, all with smiles on their faces. Yoke was especially happy. After so many matches, the White Eagle Nation was no longer the defeated side. It was saddening to speak of it. A great world power like them shouldn't have been in such a miserable state in the exchange event, but this year was unfavorable for them. Everyone was targeting them, and the martial warriors that they had sent out all received cruel treatment, throwing their dignity into the mud. It was a bit better now. Now that Xuan had displayed his strength, he showed all the other martial warriors that the White Eagle Nation had top talents as well. On the contrary, Arnold was in a bad mood. The Large Eagle Nation had high hopes for Gerald, but he was defeated at Xuan's hands. It was undoubtedly the biggest upset in this exchange event. However, he still comforted Gerald with a few words. After all, he was a talent of the Large Eagle Nation. If his mental state was affected by this defeat, it would definitely be a huge loss. It's a pity, Dan Taixian retracted her gaze and said regretfully. Are you talking about that Gerald? Wang Teng asked. Yes. No matter where he is, he would be considered a top talent. It's a pity to lose like this. Dan Taixian commented. It is a pity. It would have been better if he could have a match with me. There was a strange light in his eyes as Wang Teng rubbed his chin. He felt that if Xuan was replaced by him, he could have farmed more attribute bubbles out of Gerald. Wang Teng glanced at his attributes panel. Under the scripture section, there was a new addition, Divine Wind Scripture, a Skyrank Force skill scripture. In addition to Leitang Battle Conscious, the most valuable loot this time around was Gerald's Divine Wind Scripture. Wang Teng had obtained many Skyrank scriptures. He already had 4 Skyrank Force skill scriptures: Earth, Fire, Wood, and Water. Now, he had gotten his hands on a Skyrank Wind Force skill scripture, raising the total to 5. If people knew about this, their jaws would drop. It was extremely extravagant for someone to obtain a sky-rank scripture, and they would spend all their family fortune on it. Yet, Wang Ting had 5 of them. No one would even dare to think about such a thing. However, Wang Ting was still not satisfied. He set his eyes on Gerald, wanting to obtain more divine wind scripture attributes. "What's with that gaze of yours?" Dan Taixian asked helplessly. Gerald was already miserable enough, but Wang Ting still didn't leave him alone. She knew that he was thinking about weird things when she saw his gaze. If he encountered Wang Ting, he wouldn't be better off than he was now. It might even be worse. Dan Taixian knew Wang Ting too well. This guy would never defeat the opponent in a normal way. Cough, there's no other meaning. "I'm just a little happy to see such an excellent opponent," Wang Ting said with a dry cough. There was nothing wrong. He genuinely wanted to have a match with him because he saw how good he was. After all, the better the opponent was, the more valuable their attributes would be. That was the truth. While the two were chatting, a martial warrior from Country Bat walked into the Colosseum and issued a challenge to Country Xia. "Who's going?" Chu Fei and Yang Bo exchanged glances. They were the only ones in Country Xia that hadn't done anything yet. Wang Ting would not rob them of their opponents either. "You first," Yang Bo said with a smile. Chu Fei nodded and didn't say anything unnecessary. He got up and jumped into the Colosseum. After the two of them made their introductions, they got right down to the business. Their force surged, and they collided in an instant. Chu Fei was extremely strong. His wood force had reached the Brigadier General stage, and he was proficient in the use of wood force. Wang Ting noticed that he was holding a long black rod that didn't seem to be made of metal or wood. When he waved it, images appeared in the air, shrouding the martial warrior from Country Bat. There was a trace of wood force conscious in his rod technique, and it was not just a simple attack. In the eyes of outsiders, it seemed like it was crafty and impossible to defend against. The Country Bat martial warrior was holding a sword, and his body was surging with water force as he clashed against the rod images. Boom, boom, boom. After a loud roar, Chu Fei seized the opportunity and slammed the rod against the opponent's chest. It was like a snake springing from its burrow. The martial warrior from Country Bat flew away with blood spurting out of his mouth. Holding his long rod, Chu Fei stood proudly in the Colosseum, displaying a perfect stance. Martial warriors from all around the world were surprised. Chu Fei had won the match with ease. Sure enough, the martial warriors from Country Xia were not to be underestimated. "Country Xia has won this match," the high priest announced. Dan Taixian heaved a sigh of relief when she heard the words. So far so good. Zhu Yushao and Mu Zhiguo had already lost. If Chu Fei lost as well, Country Xia would almost be down. She didn't take Wang Ting into account at all. That guy was not a normal martial warrior and shouldn't be considered in her calculations. "You are so afraid of them losing." Wang Ting seemed to have noticed her concerns. He glanced at her strangely and said in a funny voice, "You know nothing." Dan Taixian glared at him. In this exchange event, the countries are looking at the comprehensive strength of all their warriors. It's not just about the strength of a single guy. You might be strong, but if the performance of Chu Fei and the others was a mess, it wouldn't change the other countries' perception of Country Xia. Zhu Yushao and Mu Zhiguo might have lost, but their display of strength was not bad. The other countries can also see that. As long as they aren't fools, they wouldn't underestimate them, Wang Ting said. Having said that, a loss is still a loss. No one can deny that, Dan Taixian added. Wang Ting shrugged. He had to admit that what Dan Taixian said was true. The world only looked at the victors, and no one cared about the failures. It was a very normal phenomenon and a normal thing to do. There was nothing else to say. He looked at the Colosseum and concentrated his spiritual power to collect the attribute bubbles that Chu Fei and the Country Bat martial warrior had dropped. Wood Force * 730 Snake Coil Rod Conscious * 150 Spiritual Realm Spirit * 35 Water Force * 760 Water Blade Conscious * 50 Spiritual Realm Spirit * 80 Spiritual Realm Enlightenment * 48 Snake Coil Rod Conscious Wang Teng started pondering. This must be the rod skill Chu Fei had executed just now. The rod was like an agile snake coiling around its target. Once you got entangled by it, you would have a hard time breaking free. He had to admit that this rod conscious had its uniqueness. The enlightenment process of this rod conscious appeared in Wang Ting's mind. In the forest, a figure was fighting with snake star beasts. He copied their habits and battle techniques and gradually came up with the snake coil conscious. Wang Ting's gaze shimmered. He received many benefits. Rather than saying this was snake coil rod conscious, it was more appropriate to call it snake coil conscious. Snake coil rod conscious was the shallowest form. The real technique was the snake coil conscious. It could be used in sword skill, blade skill, and even fist or palm skill. The same applied to other skills. At this moment, the benefits of having high enlightenment were clearly visible. Wang Ting was able to understand the snake coil conscious without anyone teaching him. The other attribute bubbles were common. Wang Ting scanned through them without giving them much attention. He would count his overall gains after the exchange ended. Next, the martial warriors from the other countries stepped into the arena and gave spectacular matches. Yang Bo noticed that everyone had already gone out except for him, so he stood up and chose a country to challenge. In the end, he won. Today, Country Xia had 2 wins and 2 losses. They redeemed themselves from Zhu Yushao and Mu Jiguo's losses. After winning, Yang Bo was in a good mood. He went back to the spectators' stand happily. Just when everyone gathered around him to congratulate him, a martial warrior from Country Neon suddenly stood up. This person was Shunai Tongji. Visit Ria Del. Me for extra chapters. This lady martial warrior had an eye-catching performance during her last match. She had defeated a martial warrior from the White Eagle Nation and even made him lose his mind. This wasn't something normal martial warriors could do. Hence, all the countries paid special attention to her. Many people knew that Shunai Tongji was a divine spirit master. There was envy and seriousness in their eyes when they focused on her. There were very few divine spirit masters in this world, and they were all really talented martial warriors. Only people with high spiritual power talent could learn spiritual kinesis and become divine spirit masters. Normal people wouldn't be able to comprehend it. Many people admired Country Neon for their good luck. This highly talented divine spirit master came from this small country. What kind of luck was that? Could it be that Shunai Tongji's mother had stepped on a lucky star when she gave birth to her? The martial warriors from other countries were wondering about her next match. Who would Shunai Tongji challenge? This was the thought in everyone's mind. With her top-tier talent, there were only a few possible candidates. The only people that could be her opponent would be Xuan, Gerald, Valeria, and a few other talents. But after waiting for half a day, Shunai Tongji still hadn't chosen her opponent. She just stood there in a daze. Her expressionless and cute face seemed a little lost. The high priest couldn't help but ask, Shunai Tongji, which country do you want to challenge? Huh! Shunai Tongji was in a daze, so she didn't hear the high priest's words. I'm asking you which country do you want to challenge, the high priest repeated himself helplessly. Oh, Shunai Tongji regained her senses. Her voice was calm as she replied, I'm not challenging anyone. I will fight with anyone who's willing to come out. Everyone. The high priest didn't know what to say. He screamed in his heart. Why are the talents this year all so strange? Why aren't they going by the book? Are they trying to create trouble? He felt that he had so much worry as the host of this exchange event. Is any martial warrior willing to have a duel with Shunai Tongji? In the end, the high priest maintained his composure and asked the crowd. The martial warriors looked at one another. Some were hesitating while others seemed restless. Chumph, asking the fish to take the bait. Why is this young lady using this scheme? Yang Bo scoffed. But her battle skills are unpredictable. She's hard to deal with, Zhu Yushao touched her chin and said. The martial warriors from the other countries were discussing among themselves too. They were in a dilemma. Just when Valeria from Country Boar was about to step out, a figure appeared in the Colosseum. Wang Ting, Chu Fei, Zhu Yushao, and the others were flabbergasted. Wang Ting, who was lazily eating his snacks and enjoying the show, voluntarily went out for a match. What was wrong with him? They were puzzled. Although the martial warriors from country Xia knew Wang Ting's personality, they were still shocked. It was easy to imagine how stunned the other martial warriors were. They recognized Wang Ting's ability. Even though they didn't know how powerful he was, he certainly wasn't weak. Also, he had the bad habit of hitting someone's face. Whenever he entered the arena, a good show was imminent. How could anyone not notice him? The high priest smiled uncontrollably. A weirdo and a tough nut. This should be an interesting match. He gloated in his heart. He had some small resentment towards Wang Ting. He had chosen Hilson to be part of the Holy Temple, but Wang Ting didn't give him any face and beat him into a pig's head. It was an embarrassment for the Holy Temple. How could he not be angry? Wang Ting stood opposite Shenai Tongji and sized up this cute lady from country Neon with interest. Shenai Tongji studied him carefully. Then, she looked at the high priest. The high priest understood what she meant. He announced immediately, "Since none of you have any questions, we will start the match." The moment he finished speaking, both martial warriors moved. Shenai Tongji disappeared and a large ferocious ape suddenly appeared in her place. Roar! The ferocious ape roared into the sky and hammered its chest with its fists. It pounced on Wang Ting. Wang Ting remained calm. He stood at the same spot and hurled his fist out. Boom! The ferocious ape's body disintegrated slowly and disappeared without a trace. Small trick. Wang Ting snorted. He moved, and the next moment, he appeared without any warning at a certain spot in the arena. He grabbed the air in front of him. Swoosh! A figure appeared out of nowhere. Then, it ran away, leaving lingering shadows behind. This person was Shenai Tongji. She had already left the center of the battlefield and was hiding in the outskirts of the arena. She was probably waiting to watch Wang Ting fight with the ferocious ape. Unfortunately, Wang Ting didn't cooperate. At one glance, he knew that this ferocious ape was just an illusion. A person with low spiritual power would get tricked easily and start a physical fight with the giant ape. It was terrifying just thinking about it. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Tip: you can use left, right, A and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters. Chapter 605, Ox Hair Filiform Needle, Her. A soft gasp escaped Shenai Tongji's mouth as she stared at Wang Ting in surprise. Then, she turned into a shadow and disappeared on the spot again. Wang Ting was not in a hurry to defeat her. He was very interested in spiritual illusion. He wanted his opponent to execute her skill to the maximum so that he could pick up as many attribute bubbles as possible. The instant Shenai Tongji disappeared, many star beasts started to appear in the arena. They all had powerful presences. There were large apes, giant pythons longer than 10 meters, ferocious tigers, ruthless wolves, and many more. The star beasts filled up the Colosseum and stared at Wang Ting fiercely. Also, they were giving off a bloodthirsty aura, which seemed real as if they were truly powerful star beasts. A single glance was enough to make people's hair stand up. Even though some people knew that this was an illusion, they were still afraid. This was how powerful spiritual illusion was. Unfortunately, Shenai Tongji's opponent was Wang Ting, a bug. His mastery of spiritual power exceeded her by a level. And this one level wasn't just a simple level of difference. The gap between Imperial Realm and Emperor Realm was so wide that some divine spirit masters never overcame it in their lives. Of course, Wang Ting didn't plan to bully her. If not, there was no need to continue this match. He wouldn't be able to collect attribute bubbles either. Roar! The large star beasts in front roared before they charged towards Wang Ting. Their attacks were varied and strange. Metal, wood, water, fire, earth, lightning, wind, all elements were present. It was a dazzling sight. Some star beasts were spurting flames. In an instant, the entire arena was bathed in fire. Scorching heat spread out. Even the martial warriors sitting in the stands felt the heat. They were astounded. Was this really an illusion? Boom. At the same time, lightning struck down from the sky. Some star beasts were drawing the lightning. Sharp spikes formed by the earth sprouted on the ground. Plants with veins grew like crazy and flew towards Wang Ting. This scene was astonishing. All the martial warriors were dumbstruck. However, Wang Ting remained composed. His expression was extremely calm. These attacks weren't all fake. Some were real, and some weren't. It was hard to gauge. If it was someone other than Wang Ting, they wouldn't be able to evade them. With his spiritual sight, he could see what the real attacks were. When he looked over, all the illusions disappeared. There were only 2 to 3 real attacks. Shunai Tongji had used her spiritual kinesis to control the forces in the area and turned them into attacks. They were all aimed at Wang Ting. However, she wasn't Wang Ting. These forces were all external help. Since she didn't actually possess them, they weren't that powerful. Wang Ting didn't move. He allowed the seemingly powerful attacks to land on him. Everyone widened their eyes in surprise. Wang Ting wasn't dodging. But the next instant, they realized that the attacks didn't affect Wang Ting at all. It's all fake. Everyone's gaze flickered, feeling shocked. It wasn't just that the attacks were fake, they were astounded that Wang Ting could see through them. Mind you, if they had met this level of illusion, they would be in a flurry. How could Wang Ting do this so easily? This didn't make sense. Was Wang Ting's eyesight so sharp? Could he see through illusions? Wang Ting remained composed. He merely released his fist and destroyed the real attacks. Shunai Tongji was dumbfounded when she saw this scene from her hiding place. This time, she was honestly amazed by Wang Ting. Wang Ting could see through her illusion. This was unbelievable. Shunai Tongji turned serious and stopped hiding. Her figure gradually appeared in the arena. With a wave of her hand, all the star beast illusions disappeared. Why aren't you using your spiritual illusion anymore? Wang Ting was surprised when he saw her deciding to step out on her own. At the same time, he found it a pity. He was happily picking up spiritual illusion attributes when she suddenly stopped playing. What should he do now? Shanben Quan was shocked. He looked at the battle in the arena with worry. Visit Ria Del. Me for extra chapters. This Wang Ting is weird. I wonder how strong he is. Will Tongji be able to handle him? He frowned as he muttered to himself. Sitting beside him was a handsome young man with long hair. He laughed and said, Senior Shanben, don't worry too much. Princess Tongji is the most powerful talent in our country. She has many secret skills, so she will be able to defeat Wang Ting. Eating, don't underestimate any opponent. Shanben Quan glanced at him and said. Awkwardness appeared on Eating Gentuo's face. He kept quiet in embarrassment. Shanben Quan seemed to be reprimanding him. Their country emphasized heavily on seniority, so as his junior, he didn't dare to refute. Besides, in terms of ability, he wasn't Shanben Quan's match. In the arena, Shunai Tongji remained quiet. All of a sudden, her body rose into the air, and she started floating. An invisible force swept through the arena as her hair danced wildly in the wind. Spiritual power. She looked down at Wang Ting and stretched both her hands out. Dense sharp glints appeared in the air. There were countless ox hair filiform needles. This is getting interesting. Wang Ting squinted. Divine Spirit Masters were able to control forces and could also maneuver objects to use as weapons. These ox hair filiform needles were extremely small and thin. They were light and easy to control too. Hence, controlling a large number ox hair filiform needles wouldn't require too much spiritual power. To a divine spirit master who had a limited amount of spiritual power, this was the best weapon to choose. Wang Ting's shooting star spiral had enough attacking and explosive power, but compared with the ox hair filiform needles, it required more spiritual power. Also, it wasn't as discreet as the opponent's needles. If these two weapons were released at the same time, the shooting star spiral would get discovered first. Of course, Wang Ting had other methods to conceal it. That was why he could succeed every single time. That was another situation. Go. A cold shout escaped Shunai Tongji's mouth. Numerous sharp glints shot forward like bullets and flew towards Wang Teng. All the martial warriors squinted when they saw this scene. Divine Spirit Masters were rare. Watching them in action was even harder. Thus, when they saw Shunai Tongji's attacking skills, they were amazed. This was new to them. Moreover, they also felt their heads going numb. No ordinary martial warriors would be able to resist the large number of ox hair filiform needles. This skill was stranger and harder to deal with than ordinary martial arts move. Divine Spirit Masters were indeed extremely talented. How envious! Also, Shunai Tongji's ability was on par with general stage martial warriors. Such powerful Divine Spirit Masters were even rarer. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Tip: you can use left, right, A and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters. Chapter 606. I haven't had enough, and you're already done. Everyone's eyes were fixed on the ox hair filiform needles darting towards Wang Teng. They couldn't help but break into a sweat for him. All they could see were countless needles covering the sky and raining down on Wang Ting. Like a drizzle, they covered all spaces. How was Wang Ting supposed to defend? Zhu Yushao and the others got anxious as they stared closely at the Colosseum. All they could see was Wang Ting raising his head and looking at the countless cold glints. A gleam of light flashed across his eyes, and the vast amount of spiritual power that was kept in his sea of knowledge surged and swept out as if a dragon had just revived. Boom! All the ox hair filiform needles froze in the sky. The needles couldn't move an inch as if time had stopped. Shunai Tongji's eyes were full of astonishment. Her needles were frozen by someone. How is that possible? Over at the spectators' stand, all the martial warriors were stunned as well. What is this? What just happened? Why did the needles stop moving? Countless questions appeared in the spectators' heads. This was a situation that was beyond their expectations. Those menacing ox hair filiform needles stopped moving just like that. It felt anticlimactic. Where was the skill of a divine spirit master? Unless Shunai Tongji was a fake divine spirit master. What's happening? Shan Ben Quan was shocked and confused. Eating Juntuo, who had just said that Shunai Tongji would definitely win, was speechless. The scene in front of him was beyond his understanding. In the Colosseum, Wang Teng's mouth showed a slight arc, and his body gradually started levitating. Terrifying spiritual power surrounded him, and the ox hair filiform needles turned around slowly, aiming at their master. Shunai Tongji was horrified. She realized that she had lost control of her needles. She frantically scrambled her spiritual power, trying to regain control of the needles, but all the spiritual power that she poured out of her body sank like a rock in an ocean. It seemed as though a tornado was surrounding the young man in front of her. Whenever her spiritual power approached him, it would all be devoured. He was a divine spirit master too. Shunai Tongji was astounded. She didn't expect to meet another divine spirit master in the exchange event. Furthermore, he was even stronger than her. At this time, with a thought of his mind, the ox hair filiform needles retraced their paths, this time with a speed greater than before. In an instant, they arrived in front of Shunai Tongji. Shunai Tongji's body shook. She didn't want to lose just like that. Numerous ox hair filiform needles appeared in front of her again, and with her spiritual power, they clashed with the needles under Wang Teng's control. Clang, clang, clang. Needles from both sides struck each other, producing a crisp metal sound. Shunai Tongji's spiritual power wasn't weak. The needles under her control moved smoothly like she was controlling her arm, and they managed to strike down all of Wang Teng's needles. The needles controlled by the both of them formed a white line in the air, clashing against each other and continuously shooting out tiny sparks, dazzling the spectators. Everyone finally got to see a match between divine spirit masters. They were inexplicably relieved. That was it. Such a scene was worthy of a divine spirit master's reputation. The previous scene seemed like an imaginary illusion. Wait, why was Wang Ting able to control the needles as well? The hearts of all the martial warriors dropped, and an incredible guess suddenly appeared in their minds. Wang Ting was also a divine spirit master. It wasn't that they had realized it late, but that the truth was too hard to accept. One was still okay, but now, there were two divine spirit masters. And that divine spirit master was a talent from country Xia. Everyone's eyes went red, and their hearts were filled with envy and hatred. Damn it, it's country Xia again. Yoke had a bad expression and a foul mood. Country Xia and the White Eagle Nation were the two major powers in the world, and they had always been competing against each other. They naturally didn't want things to go smoothly for country Xia. Fortes had an unsightly expression as he gritted his teeth. Although he hated Wang Ting, he didn't dare to say anything at this moment. He couldn't beat Wang Ting in terms of martial arts. Now that he was also a divine spirit master, there was nothing he could do to match up to Wang Ting. If he provoked him again, he would undoubtedly be looking for trouble. Over at country Xia's spectators' stand, Zhu Yuxiao and the others were stunned. Wang Ting is a divine spirit master, and he's so strong, Chu Fei exclaimed. Dan Taixian turned around. Looking at everyone's expression, she said in surprise, "You didn't know?" Everyone, Zhu Yuxiao and the others were speechless. There was no way they would know. How could they if no one told them about it? Ren Qingcang and Ji Zuming's eyes flickered slightly. They recalled the time when Wang Ting was using similar skills during the sea beast's invasion. Since Wang Ting didn't say it explicitly, outsiders wouldn't know what exactly he did. They could only make a guess. Now it had been confirmed. His teammates were all shocked. They were talents of the same generation, but the gap between them was so great. Dear Lord, you're too biased. Ji Xiaoming and the others felt powerless and envious of him. Even though they were geniuses as well and were extremely talented, they couldn't stop themselves from envying him. They wanted to be divine spirit masters as well. In the Colosseum, Wang Ting didn't know that he had caused a commotion by displaying the skills of a divine spirit master. He was focusing his attention on farming attribute bubbles. Well, Shenai Tongji gave him a lot to farm. Emperor Realm Spirit *10 Emperor Realm Spirit *8 Visit Riadel. Me for extra chapters. Emperor Realm Enlightenment *12 Emperor Realm Spirit *10 Poison Force *60 Poison Force *80 As Shenai Tongji continued to spend her spiritual power, more and more attribute bubbles dropped, which were all collected by Wang Ting. There were so many Emperor Realm Spirit attribute bubbles that Wang Ting was beside himself. However, he could tell that Shenai Tongji's poison force hadn't reached the general stage. It wasn't that high in level. Therefore, she was only applying the poison force onto the needles to attack. She never thought of directly hurting Wang Ting, but unfortunately, they were all blocked. The poison force was useless. Compared to Wang Ting's face, which was filled with vitality, Shenai Tongji was turning pale. Her consumption of spiritual power was enormous, and she would not last much longer. Is there a limit to his spiritual power? Shenai Tongji's face moved slightly, feeling unreconciled. As a divine spirit master, it seemed that she might lose in the hands of another divine spirit master. How ironic. Looks like you have reached the limit. Wang Ting felt a little regretful when he saw this scene. I haven't had enough, and you're already done. Youngsters nowadays are really weak. Wang Ting shook his head and decided to end the match. When Shenai Tongji saw that, her heart jumped. An ominous premonition flooded her head, and she quickly uttered, I admit defeat. WTF. Wang Ting was flabbergasted. I just took out my brick, and you dare to admit defeat. What about the dignity of a talent? What about the dignity of a divine spirit master? Wang Ting failed for the first time. He felt like had punched cotton and felt miserable. Although indignant, he could only keep the brick that he had just taken out. He couldn't do anything when she had already admitted her defeat. He had originally wanted to squeeze more value out of Shenai Tongji, but he didn't expect her to be so vigilant. But thinking about it, it made sense. A divine spirit master's spiritual power was extremely powerful, and they were sensitive to danger. Ordinary martial warriors couldn't compare to them. Wang Ting made up his mind secretly. The next time he encountered a divine spirit master, he would strike quickly and unpredictably. A lost chance like this was enough. There mustn't be a second time. Shunai Tongji heaved a sigh of relief after she shouted the 3 words. An instant later, she saw golden rays flashing in Wang Ting's hand, and her mouth couldn't stop twitching. This bastard, he really thought of doing that. This stupid straightforward man is destined to remain single. Shunai Tongji cursed fiercely in her heart, but she was relieved. It was fortunate that she conceded defeat quickly. She did not dare to imagine the consequences. In the spectators' stand, Hilson and Fortes, whom Wang Ting had taken great care of, felt envious of Shunai Tongji. Back then, if they were so decisive, they wouldn't be in such a pitiful state. At least they wouldn't have been beaten into a pulp. Now that they thought about it, it still hurt. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Tip: you can use left, right, A and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters. Chapter 607. You'll get used to it after a few times. Many people were dumbfounded when Shunai Tongji admitted defeat so directly, including the high priest. However, he maintained his composure on the surface, expressing that he had seen through everything and wasn't affected at all. He couldn't help but remember Hilson's miserable state. Why wasn't that idiot as smart and decisive as Shunai Tongji? This resentment made Hilson shudder. He looked around him and felt that things weren't so simple. Where did that sudden bad feeling come from? The high priest had already retracted his gaze and resumed his poised appearance. No one could tell that he was thinking ill of Hilson. Since Shunai Tongji has admitted defeat, Country Shia has won this match. The high priest announced the result. Everyone finally regained their senses from the shock they had received after Shunai Tongji admitted defeat. They looked at Wang Ting in surprise. This fellow was astonishing. He was a talented martial warrior, and a talented divine spirit master. The combination of the two made him the genius among the geniuses. Besides his evil personality, this young man from Country Shia mustn't be underestimated. In the Colosseum, Shunai Tongji looked at Wang Ting after she admitted defeat and said, "You're very strong. I hope that I will have a chance to fight with you again after I grasp the Hellspawn skill left by the Yin-Yang family." Hellspawn? Wang Ting's eyes lit up instantly. Competition wasn't important. The main thing was the attribute bubbles. He was familiar with Hellspawn. He had seen this skill in many novels in his past life. It was a good skill. If Shunai Tongji learned it, he would be able to get it from her. He had already taken attribute bubbles from her once, so taking a few more wasn't a problem. She'd get used to it after a few times. Wang Ting's eyes were frighteningly bright. He stared straight at Shunai Tongji and nodded. "No problem, no problem. You must come and challenge me next time. I'll be waiting." Shunai Tongji felt her head turning numb from his enthusiastic gaze. What was wrong with this fellow? Why was he always using weird gazes to look at people? She could feel that he didn't have feelings towards her. She wasn't narcissistic. She knew that was one of the best beauties in her country, but this fellow's gaze wasn't as simple as just taking a fancy to her. He looked as though he wanted to skin and eat her alive. If you have problems with this website, please continue reading your novel on our new website myboxnovel.com. Thanks. Scary, scary. Shunai Tongji's heart pounded furiously. She hurriedly turned around and left the arena. She wanted to get away from this dangerous fellow immediately. Wang Ting. Why did she seem afraid of him? Was he so scary? Wang Ting didn't have a clear understanding of himself at all. He swept all the attribute bubbles over and collected them. Emperor Realm Spirit *20 Emperor Realm Spirit *15 Emperor Realm Enlightenment *12 Emperor Realm Spirit *10 Spiritual Illusion *240 Poison Force *95 Poison Force *105 Poison Force *120. Wang Ting's expression turned strange when he saw the few hundred points of poison force. It looked like Shunai Tongji had tried her best to use her poison force. But it didn't cause any damage to him. Was he a little atrocious? If he knew that she had worked so hard, he would have given her more chances. If not, he might stimulate her. Wang Ting reflected on his actions. Then, He glanced at the poison force attributes on his attributes panel. Poison force, 45,75,000, 7-star, his attitude changed in an instant. Although Shanai Tongji's poison force hadn't reached the general stage, she still contributed a few hundred points of poison force. It was the same as those general stage martial warriors. He looked at the spirit attributes. As expected of a divine spirit master, the number of spirit attributes Shanai Tongji gave him exceeded the combined total of the general stage martial warriors. She gave many points of enlightenment too, and they were all at the Emperor realm. This was more than many other martial warriors. The total amount was sizable. Spirit, 226,000, Imperial Realm, Enlightenment, 195,000, Imperial Realm, the last attribute was the spiritual illusion. There were 240 points of it. Wang Teng went from the well-versed stage to the small achievement stage. Spiritual illusion, 15500, small achievement, Wang Teng's eyes glowed brightly. This spiritual illusion would have more uses in his hands than Shanai Tongji. With his spirit cultivation and his various element forces, his boundary of executing the spiritual illusion would be wider and it would be harder to see through his illusions. The power of his attacks would be greater than Shanai Tongji too. Since she used the forces in her surroundings to feed her attacks, their power was limited. However, with a wave of his hand, Wang Ting's attack might be as strong as a 7-star soldier-level martial warrior's attack. Too, if he was focused on the battle, the attacks he released might be as strong as general stage martial warriors. As the saying went, divine spirit masters relied on talent. The higher the talent, the higher the limit. Wang Ting didn't even know where his limit was. Sensing the gains he had received this time as he walked back to the spectator's stand, he thought of something. He wasn't afraid of his opponent being too strong. He was afraid they would be too weak. The stronger his opponent, the more attribute bubbles he could collect. Besides, stronger martial warriors could last longer in a fight. They could bear more torture and drop more attribute bubbles. Even if they started bleeding from the torture, it was all right. This was the advantage of being a formidable warrior. Wang Teng walked back to the spectators' stand with this piece of enlightenment. Zhu Yushao and the others gathered around him and watched him as if he were a strange animal. All they lacked were some fruits and snacks. Wang Ting was rendered speechless, feeling that he was being humiliated. He shouted, "This is outrageous." Everyone laughed awkwardly. Zhu Yushao sniggered and said, "You're too astonishing. We didn't even know that you were a divine spirit master. You didn't ask." Wang Teng retorted. "So it's our fault." Everyone lost their words. "Anyway, what stage are you at?" Chu Fei asked curiously. "Do you want to know?" Wang Teng asked him back. They nodded in unplanned unison. Even Ren Qingtsang and Ji Xiuming looked over. They were curious how high Wang Teng had climbed. Dan Taixian glanced at Wang Teng secretly. She realized that she had never understood him clearly. All along, the ability he executed was just a portion of his true power. Every time she thought that he had touched his limits, he would refresh everyone's understanding of him. This fellow was like a bottomless pit. Although they couldn't see through him, they still wanted to probe further. "If you want to know," Wang Teng glanced around him and sniggered. "I'm not telling you." Everyone. This be *tch. Everyone thought that he was going to say the answer, but he fooled them in the end. It was frustrating. While they were bickering with Wang Teng, another match started in the arena below. The person who came out this time was Valeria of Country Boar. She looked around the Colosseum and stopped in a certain direction. That was where ancient country fire was. Chapter 608. This love is a little heavy. Ancient country fire had always maintained a low profile. In this exchange event, a few martial warriors came out. Some won, some lost. But in summary, their performance was extremely ordinary. That was right, ordinary. There was nothing outstanding. However, no one would ignore the martial warriors from this country. From its name, one could see the reason. Ancient country. There were only a few countries that could call themselves ancient countries. Country Shia was one, Country Inca was another, the third had disappeared in history, and the last one was Country Fire. There were many legends about Country Fire. They were known for their ancient sculptures. Some people said that these sculptures were created by aliens. Others opined that they were the remains of an ancient civilization, and so on and so forth. There were no conclusions. However, there was one thing they could all confirm. This country had a legacy that outsiders didn't know. Ancient countries might not be strong, but they had their own uniqueness. Also, their foundation wasn't something small countries could compare with. Hence, when Valeria sent a challenge to Country Fire, the other martial warriors looked in their direction. The martial warriors from Country Fire were dressed in unique costumes. They were as unique as the monks from Country Inca. Although wearing modern attires, they also had some ancient accessories like golden armbands and anklets. These people had one similarity: they had drawings on their bodies. Some had dog heads, some had wolf heads, some had eagle heads, and some even had one eye drawn on their bodies. When Valeria wanted to challenge them, the people from Country Fire were stunned for a moment. Then, a tall and muscular bald man got up and walked into the arena. "Country Boar, Valeria," Valeria said directly. Menkalaf, the muscular man, said in a low tone, "Please." Valeria greeted him with a martial warrior's bow. Then, the force in her body exploded, and she strode towards Menkalaf. Her battle strategy was straightforward as her strength lay in her physical body. Under the golden force glow, she looked like a golden war goddess. She raised her fist and hammered it down. Menkalaf squinted. With a loud yell, the force in his body erupted too, causing his body to grow twice as large as if there was a frightening power hidden within. He faced Valeria head-on. Boom! The two fists collided and set off force shockwaves. However, their bodies seemed to be stuck to the ground, and the image seemed to be on pause. They weren't moving, but the circles of force waves around them spread out. If you have problems with this website, please continue reading your novel on our new website myboxnovel.com. Thanks. The air vibrated as residual force kept spreading. This scene was definitely caused by an astonishing power. These two martial warriors were both strength-based martial warriors. Their attacking method was simple and direct. They didn't use any weapons and attacked each other with their fists. Explosions sounded continuously. The spectators were astounded. Their ability had reached the low-tier general stage. They had seen martial warriors at this stage before, but not many of them were pure strength-type martial warriors. This attacking method gave everyone a huge blow. Wang Ting felt exasperated. Valeria was indeed a unique lady. How many men would be able to handle that strong body of hers? He admitted that he didn't have the capability. Indeed, he mustn't give her any ideas. If she continued to pester him again, he must reject her directly. A female hunk had no future. Wang Ting shuddered at the thought of the scene. Zhu Yushao and the others had strange expressions on their faces. They had obviously recalled Valeria's proclamation of love towards Wang Ting in the past. This love was a little heavy. Zhu Yushao patted Wang Ting's shoulder in sympathy, shooting him an "I understand" look. Chu Fei, Yang Bo, Mu Jigua, and the others shook their heads. They went forward one by one and patted Wang Ting's shoulder. Their expressions were the same. The same sympathy could be seen in all of them. "Brother, it will be tough." Wang Ting was stunned. What was with their expressions? What strange things were these people thinking of? From their actions and looks, Wang Ting felt that he had become a handsome prince who got abducted by an evil female dragon. His ending was miserable. "Go away. This I senti what you think." Wang Ting gritted his teeth and said. "We understand." "We're not thinking of anything," Chu Fei and the others replied in unison. Wang Ting. Boom, boom, boom. The intense battle continued in the arena. Valeria and Menkalaf kept colliding with each other, hitting their opponent with their fists. Dull thuds could be heard occasionally. These were the sound of fists hitting the body, but none of them seemed to feel anything. Their physical bodies suffered huge blows again and again. They were repeatedly thrown out, yet it didn't deter them. They would fly back and exchange punches. Time passed slowly. These two martial warriors weren't robots, so they gradually reached their limit. At the moment, they were panting heavily and staring at each other without blinking. No one was willing to admit defeat. These two people were equal in strength. Again. Valeria and Menkalaf shouted simultaneously. They dashed towards each other again. Boom, boom, boom. Dull thuds resounded in the arena. The martial warriors from other nations were in a daze. Had these two people gone crazy? At this stage, they were both exhausted, but they still continued fighting. The two contestants in the arena ignored everyone's gaze. They climbed up again after each collision and charged towards each other. Time passed. They were badly bruised. No matter how strong their body was, they wouldn't be able to handle so many violent punches. Boom. At a certain moment, after the final round of collision, both parties were completely exhausted. Their forces were depleted, and they collapsed on the ground. Bang. Their bodies remained rigid as they fell. Dust flew into the air. Everyone looked at them in silence. Many people felt that they were crazy, thinking that they only had muscles and no brains. However, at this moment, none of them were able to voice out their comments. Anyone who had persevered so long would gain respect. Moreover, they were honestly powerful. They were at the top of their peers and could be considered the cream of the crop. Shuan, Agliro, and the others turned serious. If they met an opponent like them, they didn't have the confidence to win against them. They didn't know that pure strength-type martial warriors could reach this stage. How frightening. Wang Ting sized up these two people in astonishment. Their strength had exceeded his expectations. However, he didn't find it strange that strength-based martial warriors could reach such a level. After all, he had seen a purer form of strength. Ancient gods. Ancient gods' physical bodies were the epitome of strength. They possessed the strength of Ultima, maybe even something more powerful. He couldn't imagine how strong they were. The low level of ancient god's body he possessed was enough to defeat Valeria and Menkalaf. If he reached a higher stage in ancient god's body, how powerful could he be? He didn't dare to think about it. Wang Ting shook his head and looked at the arena. He picked up the attribute bubbles they had dropped. Physical Essence *123 Physical Essence *85 Physical Essence *115. Chapter 609, Wang Teng vs. Shuan, Physical Essence. This was a new attribute bubble. Wang Teng was surprised. He didn't think that these two strength-type martial warriors would drop a new attribute during their battle. As these attribute bubbles merged into his body, Wang Ting immediately felt a warm stream flowing through his limbs and meridians. It nourished his physical body and turned into a part of him. Wang Ting clenched his fists. He felt a certain change in his physical body, similar to when he received a new physique. It was a physical change. This attribute could strengthen his physical body. Wang Ting's eyes shimmered, and he started pondering. This physical essence seemed not bad. If he could pick up a large number of physical essence attributes, his physical body would be strong enough without activating any special physique. Wang Teng possessed 5 special physiques now: 8 Arms Devil Physique, Heart of Zhongyan, Ice Cocoon Physique, Demon Lotus Poison Body, and the Ancient God's Body. Every physique had its uniqueness and uses. But in the end, the most important thing was his foundation. Coincidentally, this physical essence could improve his physical foundation. Wang Ting immediately understood the importance of this physical essence. His eyes turned bright like stars when he looked at Valeria and Menkalaf again. "Boss, don't leave. Fight a little while longer." Valeria was walking towards the spectators' stand. When she glanced in Country Shia's direction unconsciously, she saw Wang Ting's intense gaze and was stunned. Then, her depressed emotions from drawing with Menkalaf disappeared in an instant. As expected, Wang Ting was worried about her. He finally saw her pros. They would have a future. Valeria's eye lit up, and she nodded at Wang Ting. Now it was his turn to be stunned. That look from Valeria was so strange. Did she misunderstand something? But he didn't do anything. How could there be a misunderstanding? Wang Ting had a bad premonition. His eyebrows jumped around furiously, making him hurriedly push them down. There were a few attribute bubbles left in the arena. They were disappearing, so Wang Ting quickly picked them up without thinking too much. Metal Force *560 Earth Force *620 Physical Essence *35 Physical Essence *46. His eyes shimmered when he picked up the Physical Essence attribute. At this moment, someone from the White Eagle Nation came down. The martial warriors all turned serious when they saw this person. It was Xuan. He came down. I wonder which country he will challenge. Well, what do you think? There are only a few choices. That's right. But which one do you think he'll choose? Country Inca? Country Xia? A discussion erupted in the Colosseum. Wang Ting looked at the ordinary-looking young man with interest. He had more lightning force attributes to pick. Great. Lightning force, 7209,000, 9-star. He only needed 1,800 points of lightning force to reach the Brigadier General stage. He hoped that Xuan would work harder. At this moment, Xuan entered the arena under everyone's gaze. He scanned the Colosseum to choose his opponent. Wherever he looked, people would shrink their necks. Everyone knew how powerful he was from his battle with Gerald just now. Many martial warriors knew that they weren't his match, so they didn't want to fight with him. Fortunately, Xuan's gaze didn't pause on them. He looked past them and finally stopped in Country Xia's direction. I would like to challenge Country Xia. A calm voice came from his mouth. Mu Zhigua, Zhu Yushao, and the others were astounded. Xuan was challenging them. Wang Ting was stunned too. He was just thinking of getting more attribute bubbles from Xuan, but in the blink of an eye, this person came to find them. Dan Taixian looked at Mu Zhigua and Wang Ting. Which one of you wants to do it? Everyone understood that among them, only Mu Zhigua and Wang Ting could put up a fight with Xuan. Mu Zhiguo's expression changed many times. In the end, he said with a bitter smile, I'm afraid I'm not his match. Let me do it. Wang Ting stood up with a smile at the edge of his lips. Xuan is a lightning element martial warrior. Can you beat him? Zhu Yushao asked. Visit Ria Del. Me for extra chapters. I'll have to fight to know that, Wang Ting said nonchalantly. Dan Taixian was extremely confident in Wang Ting. She nodded and said, I'll leave him to you. Don't think of coming back if you lose. Don't worry, don't worry. Wang Ting waved his hand and walked into the arena confidently. Mu Zhigua looked at Wang Ting's back and had a sudden thought. Was that sentence directed at him? He was enlightened. He had lost his confidence because of his defeat to a Gliro in the past. Hence, when facing someone like Xuan, he unconsciously started to think that he wasn't his match. But who could predict the future without a fight? You need to fight to know the result. Flames of motivation burned in Mu Zhiguo's eyes. His morale was boosted, and his eyes shimmered brightly. Wang Ting came in front of Xuan and looked at him calmly. When the other martial warriors noticed that it was Wang Ting, they got interested. Would this young man, who was a martial warrior and a divine spirit master, be able to beat this top talent from the White Eagle Nation? Many people were curious. They looked at the two people in the arena. Let's start, the high priest looked at them and said calmly. Boom. The moment he finished, an aura rose from Xuan's body, and his battle conscious engulfed the air. He held his spear in his hand with lightning force enveloped around it. His ordinary-looking face seemed handsome and outstanding right now. Wang Ting stood at the same spot lazily. His aura was reserved, and his expression remained composed. He wasn't affected in the slightest. Xuan squinted when he saw this scene. This Wang Ting wasn't simple. He didn't waste any time. Stepping on the ground, he turned into a bolt of lightning. He slashed through the air and stabbed his battle spear out. Boom! Thunder roared in the sky. Xuan soared down like a bolt of lightning and went straight for Wang Ting. So powerful. As expected of a lightning element martial warrior. Xuan's ability is astonishing, Darwin said with a grim expression. I believe that Wang Ting will win. Valeria looked at the figure in the arena. Valeria, do you really like him? Darwin asked with a strange expression. He thought that Valeria went to confess her feelings to Wang Ting because he had the same interest as her. To him, this was just a joke between two youngsters. Looking at her gaze now, he felt that his thoughts might be too simple. "Why can't I?" Valeria asked him back. "You can. But your identity," Darwin didn't continue. There was a hint of worry in his eyes. "If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Tip: you can use left, right, A and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters." Chapter 610, All the Best. Go for it. If Wang Ting knew what Darwin was thinking, he might get a shock and say to him, "Mister, you're thinking too much." But he didn't have the time to think of these unnecessary things. Xuan's attack had arrived above his head. Thunder clapped beside Wang Ting's ears, and the frightening gale messed up his hair. Right then, a pitch-black giant weapon appeared in his hand. Mo Q. With a calm gaze, Wang Ting raised his head and stepped on the ground, cracking it instantly. He received the attack with Mo Q. The flames swirled around him, gathering into a blade glow at the tip of his weapon. He slashed Mo Q out. Boom! The flaming blade glow and the lightning battle spear collided. Flames and lightning exploded in the air. The residual force spread out. The moment they exchanged blows, they separated before slamming into one another again. Their battlefield was shifted to the sky above the arena. A purple and a red ball of light collided violently again and again, creating explosions that resounded in the Colosseum. The other martial warriors turned grave. They were in disbelief as they watched the intense match. Arnold from the Large Eagle Nation said in bewilderment, "Wang Ting's martial arts are so strong." Gerald stared at their fight without shifting his gaze. He had lost to Xuan, so he felt a little unhappy when he saw Wang Ting being able to resist his attacks. Battle intent burned in Agliro's eyes as he looked at their fight. Boom! The two people collided in the sky once again and separated instantly. Xuan looked at Wang Ting from afar and asked, "Why aren't you using your skills as a divine spirit master?" "If I do that, you won't have a chance," Wang Ting replied calmly. "Impudent." For the first time, anger appeared on Xuan's calm face. He glared at Wang Ting coldly and pointed his spear at him. "Tell me that again after blocking this attack." He pointed his spear sideways at the sky. Suddenly, the clouds started to change. Bolts of lightning struck down and landed on his spear. Wang Ting raised his head as lightning flashed in his pupils. He was elated. "That's right, this is it. Let there be more lightning." As he looked at the bolts of lightning, he felt that there were countless lightning force attributes waiting for him. His lightning force would be able to reach the Brigadier General stage soon, seeing how hardworking Xuan was. However, he didn't underestimate the attack. Lightning force was still very powerful. If it landed on him, it would be quite painful even though his physical body was strong. The emerald-glazed flame surged out of his body, while a frightening blade glow appeared on his Mo Q. A terrifying blade conscious burned violently, waiting to be released from its constraints. All of this happened within a few seconds. Opposite him, Xuan's long spear was entirely covered with bolts of lightning. Sparks danced crazily around the long spear. The next instant, he moved. Lightning python havoc. When he stabbed his spear out, a long bolt of lightning that looked like a python shot towards Wang Ting. The flash of lightning moved at high speed, coiling around Wang Ting from all directions and blocking the air around him. He had nowhere to hide. Wang Ting didn't think of evading either. He swept Mo Q in the air. Big Dipper flaming blade. 8th level blade conscious. Boom. Wherever the flaming blade glow touched, green flames would destroy all the flashes of lightning. The flame was extremely domineering. Even lightning had no advantage in front of the emerald-glazed flame. Who could fight with a divine fire? Xuan's expression changed, and he asked in disbelief, "What flame is that?" Wang Ting remained indifferent, not bothering to reply to him. Divine fire. The high priest finally confirmed his guess after seeing the power of the flame. When Wang Ting had used this emerald flame in the past, he didn't execute its power entirely, so he wasn't sure. He could only make a guess. Wang Ting met the opportunity to get a divine fire. Envy flashed in Arnold's eyes. He sighed. No wonder Hilson lost to him. Divine fire is a natural enemy of ice force, Gerald said. Hilson felt the corners of his mouth twitching when he saw the power of this flame. Wang Ting was his archenemy. He remembered the fear of being controlled by the brick once again. Visit Ria Me for extra chapters. Yoke was in deep thought as he stared at Wang Ting. Even he had to admit that Wang Ting was extremely strong. Xuan might not be able to win this time. Wang Ting didn't waste any time. He turned into flashes of lingering shadows and dashed towards Xuan. Xuan had never looked so serious. He crashed into Wang Ting again. Wang Ting's strength had exceeded his imagination. He didn't dare to look down on him anymore. Whether he used his skills as a divine spirit master or not, his capabilities were on par with his. In the sky, a ball of flame and a ball of lightning struck each other without a stop, releasing extremely powerful energy waves. Xuan had already released all his lightning force, but Wang Ting's attack still remained as strong as his. He couldn't gain any advantage. He had exhausted a large portion of his force. If the match continued like this, he would lose soon. Where was this person's limit? Xuan's expression turned ugly. He finally understood how hard it was to deal with Wang Ting. Wang Ting collected attribute bubbles as he fought his battle. He was extremely joyful when he felt his lightning force increasing rapidly. Lightning force *120, lightning force *80, lightning force *105. His lightning force was getting closer and closer to the Brigadier General stage. Fighting could increase his cultivation level. How amazing. However, he still needed a little more. Was Xuan starting to suspect him? Should he give him a little confidence? As he thought about this, he twirled his pupils, and his face turned pale. He said sternly, "I didn't think that you would be so strong. You forced me to this stage. Lightning element martial warriors are indeed powerful." He gave people the impression that he was a spent force. His face was losing color, and he was panting heavily. He seemed to have reached his limit. Xuan was invigorated when he saw Wang Ting's condition. Lightning force exploded again. He charged towards Wang Ting with renewed vigor. Wang Ting's eyes brightened, and he gave himself a thumbs up. "How smart of me. All the best. Go for it." Xuan didn't disappoint Wang Ting. He gritted his teeth and attracted the lightning force in his surroundings. He lashed one attack after another toward Wang Ting. More lightning force attribute bubbles dropped. At a certain moment, Wang Ting, who was picking up attribute bubbles, suddenly shuddered. A force shot through his spine and flowed around his body. A powerful aura soared into the sky uncontrollably. The clouds changed as silver bolts of lightning danced wildly in the air like wriggling snakes. They shot down and circled Wang Ting, making him look like the Emperor of Lightning. Lightning Force, Brigadier General Stage, Achievement Unlock. Xuan was confused. The lightning force around him wasn't listening to him. It seemed to have turned into Wang Ting's servant. What the hell was going on? If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Tip: you can use left, right, A and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters. You're tuning in to the Celestial War YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.